Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Has a Soul of a Legendary Dragon. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
With a snow-white fox kid in his arms, our blonde hero is making his way to the Inuzuka compound. About a month has passed since Naruto's decision to defend his priceless peoples and acquire his new Nindo during the Wave mission in an attempt to retain the heat in its body. The tiny kid he is holding shivers a little and cuddles up to the blonde. He looks down the street with a gentle smile. "We're almost there, Shiroi-chan. Just hold on. Hana-chan will fix you right up," says Naruto. Entering the clinic, Naruto searches for Hana. Fortunately for him, no one else is present at the moment, and Hana leaves as soon as she hears the door open. Seeing Naruto with yet another animal for her to heal makes her smile. The blonde boy's brief visits were always enjoyable to her. Anyone who was unable to see his golden heart was as blind as a bat. Her dark brown hair, which had a hint of red in it, fell in a ponytail at the top of her neck, and two bangs fell forward over her face. She was approximately 5 feet 6 inches. She resembled her brother Kiba in that she had fang marks on both cheeks, but she also had a heart-shaped face and gorgeous chocolate eyes. Her medium to large C-cup breasts were halfway up the zipper of a Chunin jacket. She appeared to be wearing skin-tight black shorts that hung halfway down her thighs from her jacket. "Well, Naruto, what's wrong with her?" Hana asks with a smile. "I think she has a cold, but I'm not sure. You the doctor after all," Naruto merely states. Hana chuckles, missing Naruto's fleeting dreamy expression. He holds the kid in his arms, and she says, "Come on, I'll take care of her." As the Haomaru triplets, who are all about the size of a good wolf, approach from behind, they throw Naruto to the ground and begin ruthlessly licking him. Even as she concludes that Shiroi only has the common cold, Hana laughs when she sees Naruto get back up and begin fighting the dogs in the little play area outside the office she's in. She smiles. The dogs obey Hana's commands to stop harassing Naruto, but not before the oldest bites Naruto in the butt for tackling her. "No fair," Hana-chan said. "To stop," shouts Naruto, yelling and yelping. She giggles. "Well, Naruto, you were right. She only has a cold. She should be good as new in a few days if you can give her water and food." "Sure, Hana-chan. Thanks again," Naruto says with a smile. "It's no problem, Naruto. You always look out for the animals. You're welcome here in the clinic anytime," she responds with a simple smile. After grinning at the compliment, he chuckles and nervously scratches the back of his head before saying, "Yeah, sure, thanks." "So are you going to keep this one or let it go like the others?" she asks, giving him a suspicious look before waving it away. Just then, the fox kid woke up from its slumber and jumped onto Naruto's pants, climbed into his jacket, and ran around it, making Naruto laugh because he was tickled. It then poked its head out from the jacket just beneath his chin as she watched Naruto writhe in laughter and then do nothing at all to keep the fox away from him. Hana could only smile with eyes that could compete with the best puppy dog in the world. The kid cocked its head to the side and looked at Naruto in a cute way. He moaned, then grinned. Naruto enthusiastically exclaimed, "Well, I guess I can't ignore that. I'll adopt Shiroi-chan then." "Well, make sure you come by and get her checked out every once in a while," Hana said, laughing, as she does that a lot around Naruto. As he ran to the door after nodding, Naruto said, "Bye, Hana-chan, thanks again. I got team practice." Hana grinned and then sighed as he bounded out the door. She was not unaware throughout their time here, he had been stealing glances at her. She was aware that his life wasn't good, but was it bad enough to make her the object of fondness? That wasn't good. She concluded that it would be beneficial to spend a night out with Yugao, Kurenai, and Anko. Around 9 o'clock that evening, a 5 feet 11 inches man with silver hair that falls limp to barely reach his shoulders and obsidian black eyes is seen standing outside the gate to Konoha, gazing anxiously at the city. In addition to black cargo pants that sort of hang off his body, he is sporting a black sleeveless muscle shirt with silver lightning bolts near the bottom. The man is dressed in a silver sleeveless haori with black flames running across the bottom and black shinobi sandals. It reads, Ryujin, or Dragon God, in kanji, but most people misinterpret it and say Ryujin, or Dragon Blade. I'm not positive, but please correct me if I'm wrong. "So this is the place, huh?" he said with a smile. "I hope I can find the Gaki?" He approached the gates and gave them the documents. He was on his way after they nodded. Since it was late, he made the decision to begin his search tomorrow. So he made his way to the area's most famous bar, the Tiger. In rage, he entered and took a seat at an open table close to the booths in the back in an attempt to find out if any of the nearby Chunin and Junin had information on his target. He ordered some skewers and ate in silence. Fortunately, he was seated directly next to the largest booth, which also happened to be occupied by the Junin senseis. Hana and the girls were in the next booth. Hana took a breath and replied, I know I got myself into this, but it's not like I can just tell the kid off. I mean, he is a great guy, but it's too much trouble, not to mention he's 4 years younger than me. Nodded. I know what you mean. I've been lucky enough to break Hinata out of liking him, and she actually gained confidence. The man's frown was quite severe based on these 2 sentences alone. Who hurts a girl's feelings? When he closed his eyelids briefly flashed silver before returning to their natural tan hue. Having received the information he sought, he nodded. Yes, it is his ability, and no, he will not use it again because he opposes it morally, but this was significant to him. You broke her of it? That's kind of mean, Kurenai, Hana said, staring at Kurenai in shock. She shouldn't be a fangirl, Anko said, shaking her head. Yugao responded by saying, she wasn't really a fangirl, she actually used him to get stronger, but it's sad we can't help him. The council would cause so many problems, it'd be unbelievable. Kurenai asked, speaking of fangirls, did you guys break yours yet? As she turned to face the sensei. Asuma remarked, it's a work in progress, while appearing to perspire. You say something? Kakashi asked, waving his hand languidly. We haven't even tried cause we are too lazy, if I've ever heard one, the man replied. The man's remarks annoyed Kakashi, who retorted, and just who are you? The man said, isn't it polite to introduce yourself first? With his head cocked. True, my name is Maeda Guy, and I wish to know who would dim the flames of youth of my colleges. Smirking, the man said, well, my friend, my name is Sora Ryu, and I wouldn't go so low as to dim your flames of youth, but rather I say they did that themselves. He had been staring at Guy. The fact that this stranger had just matched Maeda Guy in his flames of youth speech left everyone in a state of shock. After laughing, Sora said gravely, I heard everything you people said, and I must say I am sorely disappointed. Now see here, we train our teams, Asuma retorted. Don't lie to me. Sora sharply commanded. He continued, Asuma, you simply train Shikamaru in shogi and go. Leaving Ino to be a fangirl, simple genjutsu would have worked for her, and Choji to eat and not really work on his skills. Kurenai, you focused far too much on Hinata when you could have simply trapped her in a genjutsu that showed her she had to save her friends or die. You still trained Kiba and Shino, but their clans have done the most work. I won't lay all the blame on you because you did offer them training at any time, they just don't fit your style. Guy, you are the best teacher here, you never neglected your students, and although you did train Lee the most, he needed it, and Tenten and Neji were never ignored. Kakashi, well, you just plain suck. You trained the Uchiha because of his bloodline and neglected the fangirl, which could have been cured by a genjutsu similar to the one for Hinata and Ino. To be honest, your biggest mistake is the orange-wearing prodigy who needs to be taught how to fight and how to use chakra correctly. If you would have, he would be a Chunin, almost Junin right now, and not an academy student. Everyone was taken aback by this proclamation once more. Who the hell is this guy? Was Kakashi's thought. Asuma was unhappy, but Guy and Kurenai were essentially surprised that he gave them praise. After scowling at Hana, Sora turned to Yugao and scowled even more. He sighed, and everyone saw that the bar wasn't even glancing at them. And you say you wanna help him, but the council stands in your way. Ignore them. You are shinobi, not helpless civilians. Are you not among the best ninja and kunoichi this village has to offer? He said upon noticing. Kurenai thought, genjutsu. Yes, it's a genjutsu, and don't worry, I won't attack, I already got what I'm looking for. In a heated response, Kakashi asked, what do you mean by that? Sora shook his head and said, it doesn't matter, you won't remember anyway. He then vanished in a silver lightning bolt. They all exchanged glances after the flash vanished, and Anko exclaimed, well, I guess that's it for the night. Later, losers. Before vanishing, the others shook their heads, bid farewell, and headed home, completely unaware of the ass chewing they had just received. Midnight on that particular night, Sora traversed the rooftops in pursuit of the run-down structure where his target slept. No, it isn't worthy of being referred to as a home. The only thing it is a wind shelter. He grinned as he entered the building. He was glad that this location hadn't extinguished the power he sensed in his target. He entered the boy's room covertly and took a look around. Only broken and hardly functional necessities were present. These circumstances made him unhappy, and he could feel his temper growing. He let out a sigh and composed himself. He wouldn't want to draw Anbu to this location. He grinned when he saw the fox kid cuddled tenderly against his chest as he glanced down at Naruto and Shiroi. Sora thought, maybe he won't need all the work I thought he would. He ought to have known better. Boy, he closed his eyes again and was surrounded by silver chakra as Sora glanced at Naruto. A golden chakra rose and enveloped him. The chakras reached out and touched him when he smiled. The Anbu and the Hokage, who had to work late on paperwork, were alerted by a dazzling flash in which a streak of silver turned into gold and the chakras began to pulse wildly. Naruto looked up with tears in his eyes as Sora was kneeling on the floor of his apartment. He sensed the Anbu and knew he had to leave or risk being discovered and obliterated. It was for Konoha, not for himself. The Hokage had just arrived when he vanished in a silver lightning bolt. He began to examine the boy he saw as a surrogate grandson and the seal. Concurrently, Dragon's Realm. When Sora reached a wide field, he fell to his knees once more. Dragons of all kinds were observing him around the clearing when all of a sudden a man's agonized cries were accompanied by a chakra pulse. The dragons were frightened. This was the man who hadn't shed a tear in more than 1,000,000 years. The dragons gazed in wonder as the chakra waned. Through his tears, Sora examined his scaled hand before clenching it. "I swear, Naruto, nothing will stop me from helping you become what you were meant to be, brother." At the same moment, Kyuubi's seal, an enormous red eye, opened, followed by a malevolent chuckle. Well, kid, it seems you have someone rooting for you. Things will get interesting from now on." The court of Kami. Few creatures in the entire universe are insane enough to barge into Kami's court during its session. Fortunately, or unfortunately, for Ryu, Naruto had a friend who would do just that for him. Ryujin, the commander of the Dragon Legions, entered Kami's court as Inari was making yet another request for Kyuubi's release. Who would have thought that Sora would support Inari's assertion? Demon style of the author, flashback without jutsu. The Kyuubi's cage is where the silver chakra appears. Sora frowned as she gazed at the great demon. He was aware that someone powerful was behind this and that Kyuubi wasn't at fault. Who? Was the only question. Well, so it's the famous Ryujin, and here I was wondering who's favoring the kid. This certainly is interesting. Kyuubi looked up. "You know as well as I that this hatchling deserves a better life. Will you fight him or leave him alone?" replied Sora. Kyuubi exhaled. "I knew I shouldn't have tried intimidating you. I will not fight the kid, far from it. Should he ask, the whole of my chakra would be available to him should he wish to destroy these vile beings who claim humanity." Though somewhat taken aback, Sora answered, "So you would assist Naruto?" Kyuubi laughed venomously. "Yes, although I would rather not die when he does, nor be bound for all eternity, if what I believe to be happening is in fact happening." Sora grinned. "In that case, should you leave the hatchling a gift, I will petition the court to free you." "Done. I shall leave the boy the Kitsunkan Taijutsu style, which relies on speed and debilitating hits, should I be freed," Kyuubi said, looking shocked with the filtered information. "He should be able to master it with just practice." "It will be done," Sora said with a nod. "Kyuubi, I'll see you soon," and he vanished from view. Interesting indeed. Kyuubi grinned to see this kid's life. "I might just leave a tiny seal in place." Author Angel style. No Jutsu Kai flashback. It would be an understatement to say that the court was taken aback. "Ryujin, why would you back Inari now?" Kami said, gesturing for silence. "I made an agreement with Kyuubi about his container," Sora said, bowing. "I think that breaking the contract is in everyone's best interests." "I already took payment. Are you suggesting I bring Minato Namikaze back to life?" the Shinigami said as he moved forward. Replied, "No, my lord, rather release the seal and allow Kyuubi and Naruto Uzumaki's souls to be returned to their own states, not combined. That was not my agreement with Minato, and I shall not change it because of some half-assed petition," the Shinigami growled. "Ryujin, Shinigami is correct, it is his contract," Kami stepped in. Sora laughed. "Then both souls shall be lost to the Shinigami forever." "Impossible," roared the Shinigami. "That could only occur if Naruto Uzumaki had brought forth a dragon soul, which would cause their souls to split apart within a year." Sora's grin broadened. "Well, I guess you're right. After all, Naruto Uzumaki has manifested a golden dragon soul, so I'll just leave and let you deal with the mess." Only Kami and Yami knew what would happen, and the room stared in stunned silence. With a growl, the Shinigami declared, "All right, I'll let them go, but you owe me, Ryujin." Naruto halted and nodded when Sora's smile reached his trademark style. "How about Orochimaru and Madara Uchiha in exchange for not reaping the kid's soul and any mate he so chooses?" he asked. "Those, Hidan and Kakuzu, and you have yourself a deal," the Shinigami said with a smile. "I'll even give you a partner. You need a good woman, Kami knows." The gods would have slapped themselves silly if they had been any less obstinate. Sora nodded and took Inari before heading out of the court. "You think he'll figure out he was just played?" Yami asked, turning to face Kami. She laughed. "He already knows Shinny-kun played him, but he doesn't care." All the way to hell, Shinigami could hear the gods laughing. Grounds for Training 7. The pink-haired Bonch, Sakura had, secretly, followed them to support her. Sasuke-kun Naruto had just been blown off and told to keep doing the tree walking exercise, even though he had already mastered it 3 days prior. so Kakashi could train the Uchiha. Naruto was sitting on the ground, muttering to himself, and this is the scene that Sora and Inari find when they go looking for him. I was just blown off by man Kakashi-sensei once more. What must I do in order to receive actual training? Naruto essentially screamed. As he emerged from the tree line, Sora grinned and said, "Ask and ye shall receive." Who are you? Naruto pointed a finger at Sora and asked. It's rude to point at Nato-kun, Sora said with a frown. By the way, Inari-san, would you mind creating a false impression that Naruto arrived at work looking ill and left early for Kakateme? Inari grinned and said, "It's a pleasure. Listen, Naruto, if you join me for the day, I'll teach you a cool jutsu. Does that sound good?" Sora said as she approached Naruto. Naruto gave him an excited glance and said, "Ray, really? I haven't learned anything from Kakashi-sensei because he claims that my chakra control is inadequate." "Well, I'll help you with that as well," Sora said with a frown. "This is Inari-sama. My name is Sora Ryu." Inari bowed, and Naruto grinned. "All right, I'll accompany you, but where?" His head tilted to the side as he asked. "Obviously, to your home," Sora answered. Suddenly, Naruto became suspicious of these people. Nobody wanted to visit his house, and those who did were usually there to harm him. He looked directly into the eyes of Sora, saying that he had no malice or deceit, but that didn't mean he couldn't be hiding it, and he concluded that perhaps they should go somewhere more public, or at least somewhere he could flee to. "Nay, how about we go to Ichiraku's for lunch instead?" Naruto proposed. Looking at Inari, Sora said, "Sure, why not? With a shrug. Tell you what, if you let me check you for seals, I'll even pay for all the ramen you can eat." Being the idiot that he is, Naruto yelled, "Free ramen." "Certainly, take a look ahead," and then sat down in front of Sora, who grinned broadly. Sora looked at Inari and signaled for him to wait. After Inari nodded, Sora walked around Naruto to examine the base of his neck. Sora scowled upon seeing the prodigy seal, which causes the sealed to lose 90% of their brainpower and roughly 68% of their full potential. It also makes the body work 3 times harder to gain any kind of muscle or for training to take effect. The only benefit of the seal is that it releases all of the prior training at roughly 4 times the amount of effort. Basically, you gain 1/4 more than what you should have. Naruto's eyes widened and then narrowed to an almost imperceptible range as Sora said, "Listen, Naruto, I'm going to remove a seal called the prodigy seal from your neck." "Well," Naruto said, "what will that accomplish?" "It will make you stronger and faster," Sora said with a smile. "Don't you want that?" "Yay, do it," yelled Naruto. Sora shouted, "Fuin Kai," while nodding. "Seal release." Slamming his hand into Naruto's neck, Naruto's eyes widen then roll back into his head as he collapses to the ground. His body starts to grow muscles before their eyes. Sora looks at Inari and says, "Man, that seal was fucked up. It shut off all but 5% of his brain and 90% of his potential. It's incredible that he can function." "Humans fear what they cannot understand," Inari responds, shaking his head. "Should we let Kyuubi go while he's sleeping?" While Inari reaches into the seal and declares, "Kyuubi will not be permitted to return to this realm for 1,000 years unless the kid or I call him here." Sora nods and holds Naruto down. Inari nods and departs, escorting Kyuubi back to his corner of hell. That will be his punishment. Sora agrees, looking down at Naruto, who is just beginning to awaken. "OWWWWWW, that hurt, man. You could have warned me," Naruto says, massaging his head. "Sorry, Naruto," Sora says with a laugh. "How are you feeling?" "I feel great, like I'm flowing with energy and I can finally control it." Naruto pauses for a moment. Given that Naruto now has Sannin chakra reserves, Sora thinks, so since his mental capability is up, his control improved, and I'm guessing Kyuubi left a bit of chakra as a parting gift. This is good actually. This is very good. Now I can train his body before the Chunin exams while his clones work on mental knowledge. Sora smiles. Looking at Sora, Naruto asks, "Free ramen, huh?" With a laugh, Sora responds, "All right, but before we leave, let me show you something. Do you agree?" "Well, you haven't hurt me yet, so why not?" said Naruto, tilting his head to the side. Naruto's eyes bulged at the information, and he then looked at Sora solemnly. Sora scowled at his statement, but he nodded and pushed silver chakra into his head, showing him the last few minutes about the seal and Kyuubi. "So I'm just supposed to trust you while you train me?" Naruto asked, almost trembling with anger. "Not at all," Sora sighed. "If you want, I can train you, but it's entirely up to you. However, I will tell you everything about myself if you want to. I'll even tell you about your parents later on, when I think you're ready." With a shocked expression, Naruto asked, "You know who my parents were?" Sora replied, Yes, but I want to teach you, but if you agree you will know before these Chunin exams that I promise and dragons never break a promise. Then I guess we better get started, sensei, Naruto said with a smile. A loud sound reverberated throughout the grounds as Sora responded with a smile. Growl! Sora exclaimed. Su, ramen it is, Racia, as they both flushed. You're on, exclaimed Naruto. Laughing Sora was crying anime tears as Naruto and she sat at Ichiraku's. He was aware that Naruto could eat, but wow. When he wasn't paying, could he eat? 39 bowls and approaching 40 after letting out a sigh and paying for the 40 bowls. Sora gestured to Naruto that they needed to speak before they departed for Naruto's house. He nodded and bid farewell. Sora hurried through a few hand seals upon arrival before finishing on Ryu. Naruto recognized the glowing room as a silencing jutsu. Now that that's out of the way, Sora said, turning to face Naruto, we need to discuss your training. Naruto replied with a nod. Well, I definitely want to get smarter now that I can actually think clearly. I can't believe how much my training was stunted, so the shadow clones in the library would be helpful. Sora said, we will be doing that, and I will be personally overseeing your taijutsu training and physical conditioning so that when the time comes, you can train in the Ryu no Tsurugi style. From your body build, I would say you are built more for speed and agility than power and control, so we will focus on that before I even begin to teach you jutsus. You will have Chunin control because as of right now you have about mid-Sanin chakra. Side note. I believe that Tsurugi means sword and Sanin is one level below Kage. Hi, sensei, but can I start on the library right now? I'm tired of being called Adobe and idiot, Naruto said with a sigh. Sora replied, okay, 30 clones and make sure they henge into something else. You know the library won't let you in. Also, you're not stupid, you're ignorant, there's a difference. Naruto obeyed, and two of them used Naruto's sexy jutsu while Sora gaped. Naruto snorted and was about to scream at his sensei, who was now, in his imagination, perverted, when Sora flashed a radiant smile. Sora responded, hey hatchling, do you have any idea what you just did? Wondering what he was talking about, Naruto shook his head and retorted, what do you mean? I just used my usual henge. Sora laughed and replied, no hatchling, you actually changed your sex to woman with this. Do you know what the benefits of this jutsu are? When Naruto asked, what about it, sensei? I thought we were supposed to change with this technique. He became perplexed. Sora stared in awe. Hatchling. Henge is not an actual transformation, it's a low-level genjutsu. With this technique, you could actually infiltrate sex rings and such, as a female and change into a male. You could bust a whole ring just by getting by the guards because they think you are actually a woman. If you could reverse the technique, you could even save a woman from being raped vaginally. Girls would be knocking on your door for this technique. Naruto gaped like a fish, stupefied. Then the room erupted in slow laughter, then in wild laughter, and Naruto realized what he could do with this method. He could trick everyone in the village into believing that Sasuke is gay. He might force Kakashi to wear a pink tutu. He had the ability to make the Hyuga appear like regular people. He might be able to. Naruto, geez, prankster at heart, huh? Anyways, listen, get them to the library and make sure two of them read up on anatomy so you can complete the jutsu, Sora responded. Scratching his head uneasily, Naruto said, sorry sensei, couldn't help myself. Sighed, it's fine, but no pranks. You need to keep this low-key until after the Chunin exams. They start in 3 months, so we need to get cracking. He glanced at the clones. Alright, you heard the rules. Naruto, you read the anatomy, the rest of you find books on math, science, strategy and jutsu theory. When you're close to dispelling, choose one to tell Naruto, then wait 3 minutes before dispelling one by one with 1-minute intervals so he doesn't pass out. They nodded and left. Okay. Now we need to get you some weights and some new clothes. God, orange should have been banned when you bought that. Sighing, it's the only thing I could afford, besides I don't exactly have the money to buy top quality equipment. Sora replied, well, don't worry about that, I'll pay and in return your work your butt off. Deal? You'd really do that for me? Asked Naruto, with a genuine smile. That's right, I haven't told you why I'm so interested in you, have I? Sora said, recalling what he had seen. Sora sighed and looked at Naruto. Sorry Naruto, listen closely. Naruto, you have manifested a golden dragon soul. Only one other in history has ever done this, and it was done over 2 millennium ago during the Great Demon Wars. That person was me, Naruto, where I manifested my dragon soul through extensive defense of the people I loved against hordes of demons. You manifested it through your indomitable will and kindness to all things. Naruto, you are a far better man than I ever will be, and I wish to tell you that no matter what happens, I will be your brother in arms. When you fight, I fight. When you seek diplomacy, I will help in any way I can. No matter what, I consider you a brother and will always treat you as such. well except in training, do you understand, Naruto? Naruto fixed his gaze on this man claiming to be his brother. Could he put up with that? All he wanted in life was to be accepted by someone he believed Hana might, but this stranger appeared and assured him that he would always be helped. How can I trust you? I know you're putting yourself out there, but it's still not easy for me, Naruto said, opening his mouth, closing it, and then opening it again. Sora gave a nod and said, I swear on my dragon soul, the most important thing to me, that what I say is the truth, and if I should lie then let me be struck down by the dragons I command. Naruto looked around, his eyes widening. He bowed his head and said, Thank you, I accept. Naruto then started to cry quietly, but Sora gave him a hug and said, Shush, it'll be alright. He rubbed Naruto's back, and for the first time in more than 10 years, Naruto let out a cry. He sobbed for 30 minutes, and afterward, he thanked Sora in silence before retiring to the restroom. When Shiroi heard the door close after just waking up, she pondered why she could smell something primal in the home of her master. She got out of bed, stretched, and then trotted into the living room. Being the inquisitive fox kid that she is, she recognized the silver-haired man right away and knew he had no intention of hurting her master. How, after all, could someone with such a serenely primitive scent cause harm? She approached the man at a trot and pawed at his leg until he turned to face her. When Sora saw the small kid, she grinned broadly. Her pawing continued until Sora understood what she wanted. Well, Shiroi-chan, it's good to meet you, she said. She meowed and then purred loudly at his attentions as he knelt down to pick her up and began to scratch a particularly sensual spot behind her ear. Seeing his little friend get along with his new brother made Naruto smile as he left. Naruto teased her by saying, Sorry about her, Sora ni-san, I swear she's such an attention hog. Shiroi was happy to mimic their first meeting, and Sora just laughed after that. She hid in his coat, and Sora merely laughed at Naruto's annoyed expression. Naruto nodded and they departed, Naruto locking the door after Sora said, Okay, so off to Wolf's Claw to get you outfitted in some basic sealing supplies and wait. So, and while I like being called brother, don't call me that in public, it'll be too noticeable, okay? 1 p.m. at Wolf's Claw, Higurashi store. As the door chimed, Tenten looked up to see Naruto enter and begin scanning the area, closely followed by Sora. She left them alone since they appeared to know what they were looking for, but given that nobody seemed to want to be around the prankster king from hell, she did wonder who Sora was. She dismissed it as a peculiarity and resumed reading. Weapon Legacy, a list of the rarest and most fabled weapons. They had managed to capture a picture of the legendary, twin silver dragon scimitars, somehow. Naruto followed Sora to the clothing and searched until he found what he was looking for. He pointed to the dressing room while shoving it into Naruto's hands. Naruto went in and came out with a new appearance. The orange monster had vanished, and Naruto now had the appearance of a real ninja. He was wearing black cargo pants with golden flames licking his ankles and a black muscle shirt. In contrast to Sora, he had a black haori with blue lightning bolts that connected above his tailbone, ran up his spine, and spread out into his hair, resembling tiny tree limbs, before ending at his shoulder. Tenten glanced and almost drooled. When that kid wore actual clothes, he was sexy. Common, minus the coat that covers half of his face, he looks exactly like his father. Tenten came over and replied, I didn't want to say anything, but damn, that's better than what you had before. If you don't buy it, I might just give it to you. Good, because I want 8 copies of these clothes done in a month. Is that possible? Sora asked with a smile. Tenten raised his eyebrows and replied, Sure, but it'll cost you about $1,000 because those clothes are extra durable and have growth and repair seals on them. Sora's grin widened further. Even better. We will also need about 30 sets of kunai and shuriken, 5 rolls of ninja wire, 2 cases of exploding tags, 3 sets of beginner's sealing, and anbushin and forearm guards. Better make that 3 sets of those guards. Oh, and chakra weights, but not the ones that drain chakra. Then Tenten exclaimed, Yes sir. That'll be about another $2,000 on top because the anbu guards are expensive. Done. Glad to have done business with you, miss, Sora said, nodding. The response from Tenten was, Tenten Higurashi, glad to be of service. Naruto grinned once more and turned back to the mirror, appreciating that he now had nice clothes. Named Sora Ryu. And this hatchling is Naruto Uzumaki. Sora had said this. Naruto remarked, Thanks Tenten, and you too Sora, I can't believe I used to wear that orange thing. At this point, Shiroi chose to emerge from beneath the orange pile, and Tenten had a fangirl moment when she saw her. Kawaii. Tenten screamed, glomping the now happy kid because Tenten was striking that sensitive spot once more. It was rather amusing to see Shiroi in one hand and boxes of stuff in another, so Sora and Naruto shook their heads and let Tenten spoil Shiroi while obtaining the requested items. After everything was said and done and paid for, They left the store promising to return and went to Naruto's house. Naruto unpacked all of his equipment and the 2 sets they had on hand when they arrived, and Sora remembered how Naruto had met Shiroi as she glanced at her. Sora questioned, "Say Naruto, doesn't Shiroi need a checkup?" Yeah, probably, hold on, let me finish and we can go and get some dinner afterwards," replied Naruto. Naruto questioned, "Hey wait, how'd you know that?" Sora murmured, "I don't like doing it, but lying to a dragon is impossible. A branch off that I developed of this ability allows me to read a person's mind for up to a day. However, since you have manifested a dragon soul, it allowed me to see your whole life. This is how I know who your parents are and what happened. I'm sorry if you feel violated, but I was not expecting to see everything, maybe just the last few days." Well, I guess it's okay. Promise to tell me about your life later?" Naruto nodded, and Sora nodded again. "Then fine, just don't do it again," Sora said. They began walking to the Inuzuka compound after Naruto complied with Sora's instruction to listen, summon a clone and have it dispel your others slowly while we walked. Within the clinic, Hana had just finished checking the dogs for the Inuzuka when a man she knew far too well for her own liking walked in. She cursed that the Haomaru triplets were still asleep from their treatments. His name was Shinsui Yasugawa and he was the son of a civilian council member. He was a short little thing about 5 feet 1 inch and 28 years old, yet he kept coming in every week to harass and ogle her every chance he got. He'd been after her for months now and she was tired of it. Still, he was a customer. "Hello, Yasugawa-san. I assume you are here for little Shunshin's checkup?" she said with a fake smile. "Of course, you're the only one I let take care of my little Shunshin-kun, Hana-chan," he said with a big smile in return. She swallowed her pride once more to fulfill her veterinarian duty, even though she wanted to punch him. What gave him the right to call her Hana-chan? "Thank you for your continued business, we appreciate it," she continued to smile. "That guy is a councilman's son, Shinsui Yasugawa. He's been harassing Hana-chan for months now. I'm surprised her feral side hasn't kicked in and ripped him apart. Yes, people, Naruto is finally learning, so get used to him actually being observant." Sora and Naruto entered the clinic at this time, and Hana was too preoccupied trying to get away from him to notice. "You still keep that recorder on you?" Sora asked, nodding, and Naruto nodded with a devilish grin. Naruto handed Sora the recorder and said, "Good, keep it up, we might be able to catch him in the act." Both of them vanished from view under a genjutsu after Sora made some hand signs. Hana took the small poodle from Shinsui and walked with him to the back. But neither saw the faint glimmering in the air where a fox kid and 2 men were silently following. She went to the back and continued her examination even though she knew the man was staring at everything he could see. She attempted to move quickly, but sadly, it appeared that little Shunshin had swallowed something solid, and she had to perform 4 jutsu just to find out if it was painful. Fortunately for the dog, it wasn't, but Hana had to endure Shinsui's monotonous dribble. "So Hana-chan, how is Shunshin-kun?" he inquired. "Well, he has a small solid object in his intestinal tract, but it'll pass soon, so don't worry about it," replied Hana. Getting closer to Hana, Shinsui said, "Well then, how about I pay you for this and we can talk about something a little more personal?" This was not a question that he asked. Hana was already anxious because the civilian council was known for looking out for its members, and if she rejected him, her entire clan might be held accountable. But because he was nowhere close to made material, let alone alpha status, her feral side was screaming for her to tear his head off. In an attempt to prevent him from saying something foolish to his father, she chose to go with a combination and firmly decline. "Please pay and then leave, Yasugawa-san. I have nothing I wish to speak to you personally about," she replied sternly. Shinsui Yasugawa was not accustomed to rejection at this point. Actually, she was in front of him and the only one who had rejected his advances. No, was not an acceptable response to him. He was, after all, the son of a council member who wouldn't accept a date with one of the town's most powerful individuals. Not only had this Inuzuka bitch rejected his advances, but she had also declined his offer. He was furious. "Now see here," Shinsui said as he grabbed her wrist, "my father is on the council. You have ignored my advances for months now, and when I offer to take you on a date you flat out refuse me. Who do you think you are?" Naruto was enraged enough to jump in by this point, but Sora silently resisted him, gesturing that more proof was required. "Advances?" Hana responded with disbelief. "You did not make advances on me. You ogled me every chance you got. I do not want to date you and I refuse to do so." "Those are my advances," he responded. "You should be honored to be picked by me as a girlfriend." He laughed wickedly, "And, if you do not, then I will just have to tell my dad that you have been overcharging me for my visits. After all, who really knows what goes on back here? Leave and tell your father whatever you want to." "I have done nothing of the sort and you know it," was Hana's official way of saying goodbye to him. Before he was flung down the hall and into the waiting room, which was now occupied by Kuromaru and Sume Inuzuka, the clan head, he answered, "Perhaps, but I will have you Hana-chan one way or another." Sume questioned, "What is going on here?" 5 minutes earlier in the time warp. Sume was quietly sipping her jasmine tea in her office when Kuromaru's head suddenly appeared and his nose appeared to go into overdrive. "It can't be." Kuromaru exclaimed in disbelief upon recognizing the aroma. He got up and tried to follow it to the door. Sume questioned, "Kuromaru, what is it?" in an attempt to figure out what was causing her partner to behave in such an odd way. "No time, Sume. Follow me. If I'm right, then this village is about to be shaken to its core," said Kuromaru. Before they both took off, Sume stood in a state of shock, closely following Kuromaru. Eventually, they were standing in the waiting area of the clinic when Shunsui bounded through the corridor. "What is going on here?" Sume asked. Now Hana was taken aback. She had just nearly knocked her mother over with a customer. She knew now that she was going to get into trouble. She could have a good reason, but her mother would never let her move on. "Yasugawa-san, your father is looking for you. Please head home immediately," said an Anbu who appeared out of nowhere. After giving a stupid nod, the man grabbed his dog and took off running like a crazy person. Naruto and Sora left the back as soon as the door was shut. Kuromaru froze in disbelief upon seeing Sora. It finally occurred to Sora as he gazed at this familiar-looking dog. Sora exclaimed, "Kuro-chan?" incredulously. After glancing at the man, Sume burst out laughing, and soon after, everyone else did too, with the exception of the elderly dog, who was now snarling at Sora. "I'm sorry, it was just too good," Sora said, wiping a tear from his eye. "How are you, Kuromaru? You're all grown up now, and I'm sure you have your own litter to worry about." "Indeed, and I am just fine, thank you, Ryujin Dono," Kuromaru said with a smile that was as big as a dog's. Even though Naruto surmised that was Sora's title, the others were perplexed by this point. Sora approached Kuromaru, knelt down, and gave him a hug. "Good to see you, old friend." "Likewise." The pulsating vein on Sume's forehead was evidence that she was never a patient person. "Okay. What's going on?" "First, I find my daughter harassing a customer, then Naruto Uzumaki and some guys show up out of nowhere and now you're acting like old friends," Kuro explained. When Sora held up a recorder and played back the conversation for Sume, Hana's obvious embarrassment vanished. Let's assume that she used some language that is more appropriate for readers who are older than 3000. With a sigh, Sume turned to face Sora and said, "Thank you for this. I wouldn't want Hana-chan to get in trouble like this for no reason." "Thank the kid, not me, because he's the one with the recorder," Sora said with a smile. "Never know what you can find out, and it helps to have proof," smirks Naruto. When Hana finally notices Naruto's new equipment, she blushes and Sume smirks. "What the devil? I'm flushed. However, he is 4 years my junior." "Hana, get your act together. Was that buff always him?" Despite noticing the blush, Sora chooses to ignore it. "Listen, why don't you close the clinic early and we can talk in your home, because I don't feel entirely comfortable repeating everything out here." With a nod, Sume remarks, "Very well, but this better be good." He giggles, "If he is going to say what I think he's gonna say, trust me Sume, you'll be gobsmacked by the end of it." Dinner at Inuzuka's that evening at 7 p.m. "I ordered some steak shish kebabs from Akamichi's. They will be here soon, so can we get this started?" Sume inquired. "Your honest voice, old friend, what do they think of Naruto?" Sora asked, turning to face Kuromaru. The question appeared to catch everyone off guard, but Kuromaru responded, "The council can't stand him and will do anything to keep him from having any type of friendship." Hana risked her livelihood to treat the animals he brought in. Sume has always supported him in votes, but she is always in the minority. Hana and Sume appeared indignant that he voluntarily divulged such information. "Well, I'll be honest with you, my name is Sora Ryu." "Calm yourselves, ladies." "Thank you, Kuro. I know it wasn't easy to do that." Sora sighed after Kuro nodded and the women glared as Kuro stated, "I am Ryujin, and I humbly request your solemn pledge that no one outside of this room, including your Hokage and council, will hear anything you say after this." At first, they appeared doubtful, but Kuromaru interrupted, saying, "Ladies, promise him he'll tell you everything. You will understand why he swore you to secrecy once it is finished." "We promise on our fangs and claws we shall not breathe a word of this to others." They sighed after turning to face Kuromaru after glancing at Sora. Kuromaru looked at Sora, who put up the silencing seal, nodded, and started to explain everything, from how he had first arrived in Konoha to how messed up Naruto's learning was to how he had met them in the clinic. Surprising even Naruto, the doorbell rang, and the food was delivered and served as they munched. "That is a lot to take in." Sume sighed. "I wouldn't believe you if Kuromaru hadn't supported you." I know, but believe me, Sora said, nodding. I wouldn't tell Kuromaru's friends lies. Naruto, is what Sora-san said true? Hana asked, glancing at Naruto. Were you intentionally not taught and actually under that seal? After lowering his gaze, Naruto said, Hi Hana-chan. Fortunately, Sora-ni-san located me, and we are starting to undo the effects. Is it true that the civilian council is preventing women from interacting with Naruto in order to prevent him from becoming a father? Sora asked, glancing at Sume. Hana hung her head in embarrassment and actually started crying at that, but Naruto appeared shocked. She had known her mother had warned her to keep her distance, but she was unaware that the council was forcing her hand, which was terrible. Yes, they are, Sume said with a sigh and sparkling eyes. They informed all of the clan heads that a woman would not be able to bear children and would not survive to see another sunrise if she became close to the demon brat. Although no one can verify it, they are said to have Danzo's support. Hana was crying uncontrollably, Sora frowned, and Naruto appeared to be on the verge of tears. Why didn't you tell me? Hana asked, sniffing and turning to face Sume. I was just told to keep away by you. So she's just like them too, huh? I guess I can't blame her, Naruto thought as he stiffened and turned to face Hana. I knew you liked to see his smiling face every day, and he always brought those animals to the clinic, Sume said, her eyes still downcast. In my opinion, he could make your day better, and maybe you could do the same for him. He does brighten my day. Hana frowned. I wouldn't have given a damn about the council. I think Naruto is the sweetest guy I've ever met. Mom, he doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. With a sly smile, Sora thought, well, maybe there's still hope for you, hatchling. She just stood up for me. Did I misjudge her? Maybe I was right the first time. Naruto stared in shock at Hana's declaration. Hana's first glimpse of Naruto's genuine smile, which was not as broad as his famous foxy grins, made her heart practically melt in her rib cage. Naruto remarked, thank you, Hana-chan. Sora laughed, and Sume grinned, thinking, if I play my cards right, I may have little dragonaires and dragonettes running around. She looked at Kuromaru, who had a similar gleam in his eye, and if Hana had been able to think clearly at the time, she might have blushed rather than just grinned silly. Well, since we agree, how about we arrange to take care of this little, Sora said, clearing his throat circumstance. With a curious expression, Sume asked, what could be your strategy? The Chunin exams are being held in 3 months, Sora said with a broad smile. Naruto is being trained by me and will be prepared. I'll be taking the hatchling to train in the dragon arts for 4 years, among other things, during the 1-month break. Staring, Naruto said, 4 years, never will I be able to go back in time. Normally, no, Sora laughed. However, it will be 1 month here and 4 years where we are heading, indicating that while everyone else will stay the same, you will age 4 years. Kuromaru gave a nod, saying, so dimension hopping? Sora nodded, and Hana remarked, so Naruto-kun will be my age when he returns. Sume couldn't help but ask, so it's Hana-chan now, Naruto-kun? Naruto and Hana turned beet red as they laughed. Yes, Hana, he will be. Sora sighed. Do you accept this, Naruto, anyway? If you do, you can claim your heritage upon your return. No, I won't reveal who it is just yet, but if Naruto wants to, I will share the information with him when he finds out. They already know everything else, and yes, I accept, Naruto said with a nod. Then we better be going, Naruto, Sora said as she stood up in response to your inquiry, Sume-san. His heritage is indeed that significant, Chao. A silver lightning bolt vanished. Sora and Naruto, and Hana remarked, well, at least things will be interesting in 3 months. Sume nodded before making her way to her room. Yeah, and Hana? Yes? Hana asked, turning to face her mother. If you want to, I approve, Sume said. Otherwise, he will undoubtedly make another woman happy. I might be able to get him myself. And as she made her way to her room, she laughed. Hell no, you old biddy. Whoa, calm down, wild side. Still, maybe letting my wild side get near Naruto would be fun, Hana thought as she blushed at her mother's words. Before going to bed, Hana wiped some blood from her nose and laughed perversely. A bucket of cold water and his mattress being flipped woke Naruto up at 5 in the morning. He spit out the water and gurgled before glaring up at his attacker. Aniki, what the hell was that for? Naruto let out a roar. You are running late for hatchling training, Sora answered. When Naruto smelled eggs and bacon in the kitchen, he complained about sadistic brothers. He turned to face Sora, who nodded to the bathroom before going back to the kitchen. Naruto went through the morning routine, dressed in his new clothes, made his 30 clones, and sent them to the 24-hour library. He sat at the table and gazed hungrily at the nearly ready breakfast. Now, Sora wasn't a great chef, but when all you eat is ramen, Let's say Naruto ate the breakfast at a rate that made Hiruishin appear slow. Alright, follow me. We're heading to Training Ground 8, Sora said with a laugh when I checked it out yesterday. Nobody was using it. Shiroi jumped into Naruto's Haori and nestled into a rather large pocket on the side of his leg after Naruto nodded, saying, "Plus, it's near your team's training ground, so less time moving from one to the other." Fortunately, it was early in the morning, so nobody noticed the two of them jumping across rooftops to get there. "Alright, Naruto," Sora said as she turned. "This is how it will operate. To warm up the muscles, we will begin with a few stretches. After that, you will complete 5 laps around Konoha's outer wall, then 50 pull-ups, squats, push-ups, and sit-ups. After that, meditate for 20 minutes to improve your chakra control and relax. By 7, you ought to be finished. I will now determine whether you join your team or send a reinforced Kage Bunshin to take your place while I train you myself. Fortunately, I am a demon hunter by nature, so I am well versed in the Kitsune Ken style and can fix your mistakes." "But sensei, you didn't tell me you hunt demons," Naruto said, looking shocked by the news. He sighed. Good. Sora was a little surprised. "Oh man, I really need to explain everything. Stupid procrastination. You see, despite the common misconception that there are no battle angels, dragons are the natural guardians of heaven. All of them serve as the gods' messengers, the guardians of balance, and heaven's warriors are dragons. We make sure that neither the good nor the bad side of the scale tilts too much. Actually, I have a voice in Kami's council because I was chosen by the dragons as their commander, hence my title, Ryujin. Although I don't often use it, dragons automatically side with Kami unless there's a significant conflict, in which case I step in." Nodding, Naruto said, "That makes sense. Shadows do not exist in the absence of light. Light cannot be seen without shadows. Furthermore, it should go without saying that you should be on the council." Sora grinned and said, "Naruto is excellent. Additionally, I still have weight when I need it, even though the position is primarily for show. As I mentioned earlier, we will train in your manner until lunch, with occasional 10-minute breaks. If you don't attend your meetings, you create roughly 300 clones after lunch, and then we'll work on chakra control. I'll decide whether you pick up a new jutsu or not at the end of the day when you return. If you are traveling with your team, we will teach you taijutsu while your clones practice chakra control. Do you understand?" Naruto enthusiastically concurred, exclaiming, "Hi sensei." Sora shook his head as Naruto started working, and he suddenly remembered that he had an errand he wanted to run but had one last thing to tell Naruto. Sora laughed as Naruto attached his weights and, after reading the instructions, added enough weight to make them about 20 pounds on his feet and 15 for each of his hands. "Listen, Naruto, I want you to join your team today," Sora said as she approached. "Practice walking on water without visiting your teammates with Kage Bunshin and meditate. If you don't receive training, you can hide from Kakashi. After all, it's well known that you avoid even Anbu." "Hi sensei," Naruto said with a smile. "What are you going to do?" "Seeing someone who needs to be taught a lesson," Sora said with a smile. After a brief moment of concern, Naruto remarked, "You're not going to harm anyone, are you?" In response, Sora shook his head and said, "No, maybe just scare him a little." With a laugh, Naruto said, "All right, have fun," and departed for his laps. As he made his way to the Inuzuka compound, Sora said, "Now it's time to see an old man about what is rightfully Naruto's. He would require assistance in persuading the old Kage that he was authentic." Office of the Hokage, 7 a.m. Despite his many roles as Sandaime Hokage of Konoha, Sensei to the Sannin, student to the Sho and Nadaime Hokages, Kami no Shinobi, and much more, Sarutobi Hiruzen has never been able to defeat the greatest enemy of the Kagesa paperwork. Although he had only just arrived, his desk appeared to be piled high with the forms and files he needed to complete, and he was currently cursing the Nidaime Hokage for assigning him to this position. He had no idea that his greatest trial was quickly approaching, and he could only hope that the man would become his ally rather than his worst nightmare. He was always suppressing his killer intent, key from now on, when he considered all the things the Sandaime should have done for Naruto but never did. Naruto has a big legacy, and Sora fervently hoped the old Kage had very good reasons for his actions. If not, may Kami have mercy on his soul. For Ryujin takes no prisoners. Sora had already fetched Kuromaru and Sume to support his story and claims. Sume, who had watched as the old Kage sat back and gave into old age, was far too exhausted to run this village with the grip required to make the politics disappear. The two of them, Kuro and Sume, were following Sora and secretly praying that the old Kage could withstand Sora's wrath. Perhaps, just perhaps, Sora could make the Kage realize what he had allowed to happen. Sora approached the secretary as soon as she entered the Hokage tower and said, "I need to speak with your Hokage, please." "I apologize, but without an appointment, no one is permitted to see the Hokage," the secretary said, looking up. "We have a spot available in 2 months if you need one." With a frown, Sora said, "All right, I suppose I'll just take action." He held his hand out to the right and stuck his forefinger and middle finger out. "Byakurai. Now, miss, that was only at 10% of my power. May I have that appointment now?" The secretary said, leaning onto the desk as a silver lightning arc burned a hole in the wall. Looking shocked, the secretary gave a stupid nod and Page the Hokage Sume was a little aroused, thinking, "Damn. I wonder what else he can do if that was 10%. Sume wondered why no Anbu had shown up as they ascended the stairs, and Sora saw her bewildered expression and remarked, "If you're worried about Anbu, don't." Just before Byakurai, I used a basic silencing jutsu. Sume just nodded, and they entered the office. "Ah, Sume-san, to what do I owe the pleasure of your visit?" The Sandaime was hoping that his visitors would divert his attention from this dreaded paperwork, so he was surprised to learn that one of them was none other than Sume herself, the head of the Inuzuka clan. He wondered who the silver-haired man was, but he brushed him off most of the time. Anything to avoid paperwork for a short while. Did he ask? Sora came forward and said, "Worm, I am the reason she came. I have sensitive information, and I know you don't want idiots to hear it, so please dismiss your two Anbu." An Anbu member stepped forward and said, "Who are you? Furthermore, why do you think our Hokage is a worm?" "You don't understand." Kuromaru snarled. Instead of calling Hokage-sama a worm, as in the Dirt Eater, he referred to him as a WYRM, as in a Dragon Elder. They departed with a silent shunshin after Sortobi waved off the Anbu, but they were unhappy. Sora ran through some hand seals, and the room glowed blue and then silver before returning to a bright one. Sarutobi recognized the silencing seal, but what was that silver light? Sume quietly took the chair next to Sora, who was seated in front of the Hokage. "Well, that takes care of the fools now. Sarutobi, I respect you for your duty to this village, which is why I called you Worm." Sume said, "However, you and I have a lot to talk about, and it all has to do with one Namikaze Naruto, who is the son of Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze and Minato Namikaze." Sarutobi was thinking, how the hell does he know that? Only Jiraiya and I know of his heritage. Did someone connect the dots? Did he find out? Oh god, what if he told Naruto? The Sandaime was looking pale as a ghost and was sweating profusely. Sume was stunned that she hadn't figured out the pup's sire when it practically stared her in the face. "Before you have a heart attack, I haven't told anybody," the Sandaime said with a sigh of relief, yet. After glancing at the man in front of him, Sarutobi said, "How did you find out about this? That secret is only known by 2 people in the entire world." "It's true that only 2 people in this world are aware of it," Sora sighed, who said, "I'm from this world, though." Sarutobi looked like a fish out of water when he finished explaining his background and current situation because he really did not want to be interrupted. Fortunately, Sume had run interference and verified everything. After a few minutes of silence, Sarutobi turned to face Sora and said, "That is quite a story, but you still haven't explained to me why you're here or how you discovered Naruto's ancestry." Sora exhaled. "I left out Naruto because I wanted to speak with you about your actions, rather your inaction, concerning Naruto." To put it mildly, Sarutobi was not pleased. "Look here, Naruto has become a wonderful young man. What are you trying to say? How about the fact that Naruto has been beaten at least every 2 weeks since he was 7 years old?" Sora snarled. What if his birthday consisted of broken limbs and stones rather than cake and gifts? What if Naruto is as mature as a 7-year-old, but you don't see anything wrong with that? After all, the Sandaime was white at the key Sora was putting off, so Sume slowly moved a hand over to Sora and looked at him to calm down. When he eventually composed himself, Sora turned to face the still recovering Sandaime and asked, "How many seals should Naruto have?" This question startled Sarutobi, who said, "Just one. The Kyuubi is repelled by the Shiki Fuin." Sora wanted to growl once more, but she was mistaken because Naruto had 3 seals. It included a protege seal as well as an extra mental suppression seal. The Shiki Fuin is still there, of course. Protege seal. Is what this man is saying true? Have I really ignored Naruto this much? Sarutobi exclaimed in shock. "Sora, I would like to make a request," the Sandaime said quietly. "Yes?" Sora asked, looking interested. "Tell me all you know about Naruto," the Sandaime said, putting his hands together under his chin. "As long as it doesn't harm Konoha, I will comply with your request in exchange. The favor I want is to have Naruto's heritage announced at the Chunin exam finals after their fights," Sora said with a pleased expression. "Furthermore, I want any money or scrolls he may have right now." "I can't just give that to anyway," said Sarutobi, looking surprised, "but the first part shall be done if Naruto is strong enough. After my story, you will see that I can be trusted with Naruto's heritage," Sora said, nodding during the break. "I also intend to reveal Naruto's parentage." If this man broke the protege seal, then Naruto should be far smarter and more mature. Hopefully he won't hate me for keeping it from him, said Sarutobi, nodding. Sarutobi was then informed by Sora about Naruto's seal, its function, the disappearance of the Kyuubi, Naruto's Dragon Soul status, and his acceptance of Sora's brotherhood. While Tsume was thinking about Naruto himself and hoped her daughter wouldn't ruin her chance with him, Sarutobi remained composed and was genuinely surprised several times. Then she got a devilish grin and said, finally I can let Hana have what she wants. Not to mention I can help the pup as I should have all this time. All I have to do is ask Sora to take care of it. I see. The Sandaime sighed. Let me start by saying thank you, Sora-san. In just 2 days, you have done more for the boy than I have in his entire life. Sora nodded his head. While I may have been able to help, he wouldn't be so receptive if you had not paid attention to him like you have. Clearing her throat, Tsume said, may I also ask for a favor, Sora? Sure. You have done me a service, so it is only right that I do the same, Sora said, nodding despite her perplexed expression. What do you require? After giving him a quick glance, Tsume said, protect Hana. You gave her permission to seek Naruto, didn't you? Sora said, a little taken aback. Tsume grinned and nodded, saying, I might have to take him if she lets him go. The Sandaime appeared somewhat repulsed, but Sora simply laughed and said, very well. However, Worm, did you know that Danzo and the Civilian Council have been attempting to prevent the clans from being close to Naruto? Though he didn't express it, the Sandaime was taken aback. No, they stayed away. I always thought, in anticipation of what the civilians would say, what is the connection between this and Danzo? One wild woman thought. Hey. Hook, line, and sinker Hokage-sama. Tsume responded. He backed the council with not only economic bans but also threatened any female near Naruto having their reproductive organs removed. Astounded, Sarutobi exclaimed, they what? He bellowed, and Tsume found herself gasping for air due to the old man's ki, but she paid little attention to it, seeing only the fire blazing in Sarutobi's eyes. Hey! The Kami no Shinobi is back. Run in fear, you little cowards, she exclaimed. Pardon me, Hokage-sama, the secretary said as the desk began to buzz. However, it appears that a council meeting is being called to order. After a moment of staring at the buzzer, Sarutobi pressed the button and remarked, very well, tell them I will be there shortly and with Tsume-san and a guest. Looking up at them, he said, it's time to correct these errors. I've had enough of this job again. I'll stand for Naruto, but I'll pick a successor shortly, both of you. Thank you. He went over to the fourth picture and entered a combination to open the safe behind it. He then took the scrolls and gave them to Sora, saying, please take care of him. I promise I will make it up to you, and to Naruto. I hope he'll pardon me. He never blamed you, Sora said with a smile as she accepted the scrolls. One don't believe he ever will, personally. Thank you, Sarutobi said with a smile, and as the seals fell, he gestured for them to follow. Training area 7:10 a.m. When Naruto arrived, he greeted Sakura and Sasuke as usual, and of course he didn't ask Sakura out, but that didn't stop her from trying to hit him for being a minute late. He was starting to wonder if he had suffered enough brain damage to even consider liking this girl, and of course his crush died when he met Hana-chan. Naruto and his team had been waiting for his sensei, and he had already made his clones who were in another clearing practicing the water walking, basic, and tree climbing with leaf balancing. Kakashi appeared while Naruto was meditating, rising from his treetop position to join his teammates. Okay, team, we won't be going on a mission today. Instead, we will be training, Kakashi said with a smile. Do tree walking until you're exhausted. Sakura. Naruto does the same thing, but add leaves to make it harder. Sasuke, join me for some more jutsu. Nay, Kakashi-sensei, why can't I learn a new jutsu? Said Naruto. Naruto Baka, don't question Kakkashi-sensei, screamed Sakura. Naruto, your chakra control isn't good enough, said Kakashi after the three men had fully recovered from their hearing loss. If you get better at that, I might teach you the next control technique. Not because they all thought, hi sensei, may I go somewhere else to train? Naruto appeared dejected. I do not wish to disturb Sakura. Sakura was somewhat impressed but simply dismissed it as an effort to curry favor with her, while Kakashi was a little taken aback but nodded, and Naruto left Sasuke simply h-end. It was 10:10 a.m. with Naruto. He was punching a tree ruthlessly, saying, stupid Kakashi-sensei, he doesn't even watch me train and yet he claims my chakra control isn't good enough. His hands were bleeding, but he didn't care because he was angry and needed to get it out of his system. He stopped half an hour later, and his hands were still healing quickly, suggesting that Kyuubi had left that little ability. Tushiroi leapt out of her pocket and mewling at Naruto, who looked down and then grinned softly. He lay down on the ground, and Shiroi licked the wounds gently before cuddling up to him. Shiroi simply curled up in the warm spot he left under the tree while Naruto stood up and began going through the beginning katas for Kitsune Ken. He was currently reviewing his training schedule when one of his clones dispelled from the library, saying, seals seem interesting." He created 5 more clones and gave instructions to 4 of them to research seals and 1 to obtain some basic sealing supplies from Wolf's Claw. Council Chamber. Concurrently the elders, Danzo, the clan heads, Inoichi Yamanaka, Shoza Akamichi, Shikaku Nara, Shibi Aburame, and Hiyashi Hyuga, as well as the civilian council members, including Sakura's mother and Demon Hater, Satsumi Haruno, and Jiro Yasugawa and his son Shinsui, were all present when Sarutobi, Sume, Kuromaru, and Sora entered. Unexpectedly, Hana was also present, and Sume already knew the purpose of the meeting. It was fortunate that she had taken the recorder from her home before she left. Homura got to his feet and said, "Who is that and why is he at this council meeting, Hokage-sama?" "He is here as a witness to the reason this council was convened and his name is Sora Ryu," Sume said, merely glancing at her. The civilians were a little uneasy because the Hokage was present and they couldn't punish Hana and the Inuzukas directly. So Sora bowed to the ninja council while completely ignoring them. The elders saw this, and Danzo thought, I haven't met this man before, what could he be doing here? Sume and Sarutobi took their seats, while Sora just stood beneath Sume's seat. Jiro raised his voice and stated, "We are convened today to bring forth charges on the Chunin Hana Inuzuka for physically assaulting Shinsui Yasugawa." Shinsui was grinning like a madman, saying, "Now you bitch, I'll get my revenge and I'll even make sure your little demon boy is punished as well." Sarutobi appeared surprised because he knew Hana and her reputation as a calm and caring person, despite her Inuzuka blood, was almost legendary among the medic nin. She was specifically a veterinarian but knew enough to heal most basic wounds for humans as well. "Very well, would Shinsui please give his version of the story?" sighed Sarutobi. "Well, Hokage-sama, I take my dear little Shunshin to the Inuzuka compound every week to have Hana-san check him for any problems," Shinsui said, nodding and getting to his feet. Sume responded, "It is well known young Uzumaki-san brings wounded animals for treatment." Clearly, this did not sit well with the civilians, and the ninjas were irritated at the blatant tactic. I frequently noticed one Uzumaki Naruto present in the clinic, but always dismissed it. We at Inuzuka are pleased to assist any injured animal, regardless of who brings it in. With an inward frown, Shinsui went on, Gomen. Anyway, I took Shunshin in for his routine examination. I observed that Hana-san appeared to be observing me and staying closer than usual during this examination. I thought asking her out would make her happy. She openly expressed her dislike for me after I did so, then beat me and threw me out. Hey, that ought to show you. It's just your word against mine and I know I will win once I do. I'll drop the charges in exchange for a night with you. I wish to press charges of assault because of the injury I received in compensation for my overcharge that I believe has been paid for her personal grudge towards me." While the ninjas, who are trained to read people's body language, were somewhat suspicious of how he carried himself, the civilians appeared to believe his story. Sarutobi nodded and said, "Thank you. Would Hana-san mind sharing her version of events now?" Danzo was thinking, "I need to eliminate this girl when the demon grows up. I can just capture him and have some of my female root rape him to give me some demonic offspring." Hana nodded and stepped up, telling the true story of how he had been leering at her for the past couple of months but had always ignored it as to be professional. The ninjas were pleased to see such control and silently applauded her self-control. Sarutobi merely regarded the claims with insufficient evidence. Sora cleared his throat and uttered, "Hokage-sama. Could I?" Recalling Tsune's previous statement, "I wonder what she meant by that." Sarutobi nodded. Neither of them had mentioned Sora in the room with them. Sora got up and remarked, "Well, to be honest, everything Hana said was accurate, and Shinsui was lying through his teeth. I got there shortly after him." He went on to explain everything he saw under the genjutsu, even asking Sume to play the recording to support his story, conveniently omitting Naruto. Needless to say, the ninja believed him, as did some of the more rational civilians. Though it helped that Yasugawa was an economic opponent of theirs. And Sarutobi, after all, why would a 3,000-year-old being lie about something as trivial as this? Sarutobi exclaimed with a sigh, "The charge are dismissed and I find in favor of Hana Inuzuka in the amount for $2,000 in reparations for this farce of a trial." The majority of people nodded, though some appeared a little irritated. Shinsui opened his mouth to speak, but his father quickly silenced him lest he bring more reparations in the way of their family. Sarutobi glanced at Sume and nodded before surveying the council members. Everyone was wondering why he didn't dismiss the council and call it a day, but since they were still in session, Haruno chose to take care of the demon's whore. Wow, she's deluded, nay? Hana-san. Hana turned to face Satsumi Haruno, the speaker, who said, Uzumaki Naruto is notorious for pulling practical jokes everywhere he goes. For what reason would you let him into your business? Sora frowned at this, but no one listened to him because everyone was focused on Hana, whose words might spark a civil unrest that was on the verge of war. Hana was furious on the inside. Every time he came to the clinic, he had an injured animal, she claimed, adding that she didn't need an excuse to let Naruto-kun in when he had an injured animal. They included everything from birds to animals as big as cats and small dogs. She was careful not to bring up the fox kits he had taken. Did it ever occur to you that he might be the one harming the animals? Satsumi asked, glancing at her. That slut. She knows nothing about Naruto yet accuses him of harming innocent animals? Hana thought as she and Sora scowled alongside the Sandaime once more. At that, Hana hardly controlled her rage and angrily responded, no, it didn't. He has been using ninja tools since he was old enough to go to the academy, and the injuries were consistent with using them. Furthermore, Sora gave the Hokage a silent signal to wait before interrupting, adding, maybe I can get this to my advantage. Naruto-kun had never suffered any injuries himself that would indicate a battle with animals. Hana realized her error when Satsumi grinned and said, so Naruto-kun never had animal-related injuries. Why do you call the Dima Uzumaki-sana so casually? Hana and Sume were pleading for assistance in private, and it seems Kami overheard them. Is it a problem if she wants to address Naruto-kun informally, Haruno-san? Said Sarutobi. With a smile gone, Satsumi said, of course not, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi would not allow her to get away with it? Really? Does this law I'm holding have nothing to do with it? The odd thing is that, according to Law 3179 of the village hidden in the leaves, if any woman is to become romantically involved with one Uzumaki Naruto, they are to report to the council to either 1. Have their ovaries removed, or 2. Turn over all children born to these couples to the state to ensure that they are stable human children. If not, the state has every right to confiscate and hold the child until such time as it is not deemed a threat. This law has no place in this nation because I did not sign it, Haruno-san. Could you perhaps tell me where it originated? The council was perspiring by this point. Anbu. The clan heads were clearly pleased when Sarutobi lit the law on fire and said, now any and all attempts to hinder Uzumaki Naruto will stop, and if I find even a glimpse that you are doing so, as 2 people appeared next to him. Take Haruno-san to Ibiki and find out who else was in on this. They nodded and grabbed the now screaming Haruno and dragged her off, blaming his ki. Sarutobi declared, I will remove your position from this council and you will serve jail time. Sarutobi hurried back to the office and sat down, only to find Hana, Sume, Kuromaru, and Sora staring at him when he looked up. Meeting adjourned. I hope you have learned your lesson. Hana bowed and said, thank you Hokage-sama for your help back there. Sarutobi merely grinned and said, no issue. Hana-san, just make sure Naruto receives enough attention going forward. Okay. The blush and sudden, eep. A smile appeared on his face, reminiscent of a certain Hyuga. Now that that's resolved, I will be taking my leave, Sora said with a smile worm. Please be aware that at this time, I will only give Naruto the Rasengan, but prior to the test, he will be studying elemental manipulation and summoning. With a slightly concerned expression, Sarutobi asked, are you sure? Summoning is challenging. They were perplexed, so Sora shook his head and said, with his current chakra, he could summon me twice over. Sora laughed and said, technically I am the boss summon for the dragons, but unless he pushes almost double the amount for Gamabunta, he will get the original boss summon. They were shocked to learn that Naruto had enough chakra to call forth Gamabunta 4 times, but he couldn't yet fully access it. They loosened up a little. In any case, Yane, I'm going. He's at about half, but he will get the rest over the next year. They shook their heads and the Inuzukas left, allowing the Sandaime to handle his dreaded paperwork, and he vanished in a silver lightning bolt. Ichiraku's. 1 p.m. A silver flash materialized beside Naruto as he was peacefully savoring his ramen. Oh, Ji-chan. 3 bowls of chicken ramen. With a somewhat dejected expression, Sora yelled, why is Naruto so gloomy? He inquired. With a sigh, Naruto turned to face his brother and said, listen, Naruto, I have 3 jutsu I want to teach you today. Sora was not happy with Kakashi because he knew that Naruto had abnormally high chakra pulsa. How else could he create thousands of shadow clones? Naruto became alert at once, saying, 3 new jutsu? Naruto, finish your ramen, and then we'll go train, Sora said, nodding his head. Shunshin and summoning are the skills I'll teach you, and the final one will be a surprise. Yada. After saying this and gobbling up his ramen, Shiroi leapt into Naruto's pocket, snatched his brother, and sprinted down the street at full speed. 1:30 p.m. on Training Ground 8. As he slowly completed the 3 necessary seals, Sora said, "Alright Naruto. Here are the hand signs for Shunshin. Now you need to properly visualize the space you are going to before activating the jutsu." Naruto nodded and closed his eyes before imagining the location, which was about 10 meters away from where he was. "Alright Naruto, keep it, jutsu is more about practice and memorization than anything else," Sora said. Naruto could perform the Shunshin by 5 p.m. He just needed to perfect it. Sora produced a big, ancient scroll and said, "Okay, Naruto. This is the dragon summoning contract. Be advised that the boss dragon will test you if you pass. You can call upon them, but most will not be happy if you call upon them for anything other than fighting or training. However, it does help them learn to fly, and the newly hatched hatchlings are good for messages." Naruto nodded, knowing he had to be respectful, signed it, and looked expectantly at Sora. Before they were teleported nearly 30 miles from Konoha, Sora nodded, approached Naruto, and grabbed his shoulder. "Alright, Naruto, these are the signs for this jutsu." With a shout of "Kachiyose no jutsu," Naruto nodded and said, "Now put about 3/4 of your chakra into it and you should get the boss summoned." Before it cleared, there was a massive cloud of smoke that was roughly twice as big as Gamabunta. Summoning technique. The giant reptile narrowed his eyes at Naruto, then lowered his head and tipped it to the side, causing Naruto to fall off. "Ryujin, surely this hatchling is not the bearer of the dragon soul you spoke of?" Ryukin, the ancient black dragon of the west, was standing in front of Sora. "He is small. You claimed that he was a better man than anyone could have imagined." Sora was secretly a little mad at Ryukin, but Naruto gaped in awe. "Did Ni-san, was that what you said?" did Naruto ask. "Of course I did, Naruto." Sora grinned. "I did not call you Ryukin." This is what Naruto did. Despite his skepticism, Ryukin chose to believe him because, after all, this was Ryujin, one of the few creatures in the world capable of beating the living daylights out of him. "Very well then, I will test the boy's spirit." Ryukin leaned down and touched Naruto's head with the tip of his nose before his eyes glazed over as he gazed into Naruto's soul before he suddenly retreated and let out a loud roar. Flash. He blinked in an attempt to get the spots out of his eyes. "You have shown yourself to be more than deserving, my boy. To avoid blindness, I can't even look directly into your soul." According to Sora, you had a difficult upbringing because you had no family. As a sign of submission, Ryukin raised his head to the ground and looked straight into Naruto's eyes. "Know this," he said, "dragons are now your family, and should you ever need us, give us a call whenever you want. I must go, Naruto, but when you seek training for your sage mode, seek me out." Naruto's bright smile seemed contagious as it spread to the other members, and soon all 3 dragon brothers, at least in Sola, were laughing heartily. "We will fight, live, and die alongside you from this day forth. Training you will be a pleasure for me." "Well, that's over. Let's move on to the final jutsu, shall we?" Sora grinned. "This jutsu is called Rasengan." "Now the first step." Naruto nodded, his smile never leaving his face. Jutsu no time skip. 1 month. Naruto's past month has been both demanding and rewarding. He was extremely proud of the fact that his taijutsu was now at least low to mid Chunin. He could respond to inquiries that would make Sakura feel ignorant because he has read almost the whole shinobi library. His ability to control chakras was, of course, the most significant improvement. He trained with clones on it almost constantly since he no longer frequently attended team meetings and instead sent his reinforced Kage Bunshin. He has finished the exercises involving walking on water and trees, as well as applying 20 leaves to his body for each. He had Kanai balancing and rotation to an art form, but he still struggled a little with Senbon balancing. Naturally, he had to be an expert in rotation in order to train for the Rasengan. At the moment, his Junin chakra control was low and his Chunin was high. Other than summoning and Shunshin, he stopped learning jutsu. Naruto appeared to be quite skilled with seals, which was surprising. He could already produce modified explosive notes. Unfortunately, seals were not part of Sora's repertoire of skills, and he needed better training to progress. Did I mention that it takes Naruto less than 5 seconds to use a one-handed Rasengan? That's correct, no waste of pansy-ass shadow clones. During his taijutsu training, Sora had been ruthless. Naruto spent the first week and the majority of the second correcting his forms because he had such a poor understanding of the fundamental academy stance. Since Naruto didn't require a watchdog, Sora left him alone for the majority of his other training. Unfortunately, Naruto hadn't seen Hana or any of his friends in a long time. Because of all this training, Naruto needed some time to rest, and Sora could use a few days to plan his next move. He then summoned Naruto and asked him to take a seat. "Listen, Naruto, you have done remarkably well in this past month. As a reward, I want you to treat yourself to ramen today and then spend the next 2 days relaxing before we continue again, alright? Sora said. Naruto nodded and smiled brightly. Good. Your taijutsu training will resume as usual when we resume, but your ability to control your chakras will be somewhat diminished. Rather, for 2 hours every day I apologize. Could you please pump some chakra into this card? Hee. Well boy, you have an INSANELY high lightning affinity. Sora said politely, and Naruto just took the card and pumped some chakra as instructed. Sora's smile almost split his face in two. Naruto's card crumpled so hard on itself that it was only about the size of a grape. We will be spending 2 hours a day on lightning manipulation and another 2 on evasive techniques while your clones work on control. Understand? Fortunately, Naruto had already studied all of the elemental compositions and didn't require an explanation. Kakashi, I don't know why you ignored this Genuous, but it's your loss and my gain, Sora thought, grinning, as Naruto nodded and Sora shooed him away. Naruto then leapt to his feet and ran for Ichiraku's at a speed comparable to Sasuke's. 12 p.m. at the Ichiraku ramen stand. When Team 8 entered the stand, Naruto was busy slurping down his ramen. So, we have the stoic Aburame Shino, who doesn't say much but has always been a loyal and logical friend. Then we have the loud-mouthed Kiba Inuzuka, Hana's brother and an old prankster friend of Naruto. Finally, we have Hinata Hyuga, who used to have a mammoth-sized crush on Naruto, but fortunately or unluckily, depending on who you ask, breaking her crush on Naruto allowed her to stop stuttering around her father. They all entered, sat down, and then placed their orders. Before they resumed their meals, Naruto looked up and saw that Shino was staring at the man next to him. Hey, who's that you nodding to? Shino? Kiba shouted. Naruto Uzumaki, was Shino's simple response. When the other members of Team 8 looked closely, they saw that the idiot in the bright orange outfit had left, and they appeared to be accompanied by a composed shinobi. No way. Naruto shouts everything he says while wearing orange all the time, Kiba exclaimed. Anyo, Kiba, Shino is correct, that's Naruto-kun. He's just dressed differently, Hinata whispered. Look at his whiskers. Naruto raised his head and exclaimed, Ya Kiba, it's me. We haven't really seen each other much, I suppose, because I've been training hard lately. So you finally got rid of that orange thing, huh? Kiba asked, nodding. What have you been practicing? Kurenai-sensei has us learn from our clans and practice teamwork. I'm learning a new move from Nei-san. I'll have it figured out quickly. Kurenai grinned as she noticed that her students' spirits appeared to lift upon seeing Naruto, and even Shino was paying close attention. Yes, Naruto. Tell me what Kakashi has been teaching you. Kakashi has taught me tree walking and leaf balancing while tree walking, Naruto said, his face darkening. Surely he taught you more than that? Kurenai and the other members of her team scowled. His eyes sparkled with rage. Nope, nothing else, Kurenai-sensei, that is all I have been taught in the past 4 months on my team. Sakura is barely better, but she doesn't really train, she just claims exhaustion and watches the Uchiha who has been taught, from what I can tell, at least 5 more fire jutsu along with advanced chakra control and taijutsu training. Oh, and he didn't teach us tree walking until our C-ranked mission a month ago where we faced Zabuza Momochi and his apprentice. Kiba screamed, what the hell? Kurenai-sensei, you taught us tree walking our first week together. Naruto, tell me, what have you really been doing this past month? Kurenai asked, looking troubled. Naruto looked at Kurenai and exhaled. I have been training in a taijutsu style called Kitsune Ken. I have also been working on advanced chakra control by making shadow clones and hanging them into various people around town and having them read in the library. I am tired of being called stupid, so I decided to change that. Team 8 was taken aback even though they were not given a comprehensive overview of his skills. It was clear that this was not the Naruto that everyone was familiar with. But enough about that. Listen, I have the next few days off. What do you say we get a few of the genin teams together and all go out for dinner? It'd be nice to know about other people we may run missions with in the future. Good idea, Naruto. Why don't you let me invite some of the Chunin sensei and a few of my friends as well? Kurenai said with a nod of approval. Smiled. That'd be great, Kurenai-sensei. I'll ask my team, but I doubt they will come. Still, I will bring a new friend I made if that is fine with you. Sounds good. What do you think, team? Tomorrow, say 7 p.m. Kurenai grinned. After saying their goodbyes, they all nodded. Naruto made the decision to take Shiroi to Hana for a medical examination. In addition, he had not seen her in a long time and was genuinely depressed about it. Office of the Hokage, 12:30 p.m. Yo worm. Sora exclaimed with a smile as a silver flash entered the office. Damn it, Sora. You're almost as bad as Naruto. The elderly Hokage exclaimed, almost having a heart attack naturally. Sora was aware that the Hokage was reading his Icha just before he entered. Sora laughed. I wish Hatchling could sneak in here while you were reading and steal your book from under your nose. That he could, said Sarutobi, shaking his head. Sora, what do you need? I haven't seen you since that council meeting. Sora became more serious. Yes, well, it seems Naruto is progressing faster than I thought. I need someone to train him in evasion. I was going through the village and its outskirts when I came across a huge forest. I think the woman inside called it the Forest of Death. I dunno. Sora interrupted Sarutobi as he was thinking for a moment. She didn't, said Sarutobi, who had gone pale. Smiled. Of course she attacked me. Still, that was some of the best evasion training of my life. Can you get her to help me with Naruto? Are you sure? She might kill him, sighed Sarutobi. Sora nodded his head. Nah. She never aimed to outright maim or kill, although she was trying to hurt me in any case. Is that okay with you? Satsume, could you please send for Anko Midarashi? Thank you, said Sarutobi, nodding and pressing a button. Why did I feel devil's yukai coming from her? Sora asked gravely again. Sarutobi's expression was gloomy. If you want an explanation, wait for her. It is a very private issue for her. I will assure you she is fully human and in control of her actions. Hey old man. Need me to kill someone? Anko said as she entered, resembling a certain blonde-haired container. After Sora nodded and the doors flew open. You. She yelled as she suddenly froze, and Sora just sidestepped her, letting her fly behind the desk. Enough, said Sarutobi, glaring at Anko. I know he was in your forest, but he is here for a reason. Anko wasn't pleased. She lived in the Forest of Death, the only location where she could escape the villagers. Anko said, a bit harsher than he meant to. Fine. What do you need and why is he here? She bowed her head and apologized after the Hokage gave her a glare. Sora saw the mark on her neck as she was doing that. Why would a demon mark her? Instead, how did a demon approach close enough to mark her and then sneak away? Sarutobi nodded and continued. Anko, I have a mission for you. You are to assist Sora here in training a young ninja who needs some help. You know I don't work well with kids. Why would you assign me to help him? Exclaimed Anko, incredulously. Sora opened up. I asked for you specifically. He needs evasion training and, as much as I enjoyed our little cat and mouse, I believe you are exceedingly proficient in thrown weapons and he would benefit greatly from this. Not to mention he heals incredibly fast, so you can throw as close as you want with no lethal wounds. What do I get if I do this? My time isn't cheap, and was Anko's actual thought. Sora glanced at her and responded, I will pay you in one of two ways, either monetary compensation, or, if you tell me the story behind that mark on your neck, I may be inclined to remove it. Sarutobi's and Anko's mouths were open. He exclaimed, you can remove the curse seal. Amazing. Confused, Sora said, curse seal? Anko approached him, snatched his shirt, and yelled, don't toy with me. WHO sent you. She began shaking him while shouting profanities. Clearly infuriated, Sora was merely observing this so-called curse seal during all of this, thinking, it's not a mark in the true sense, just a bastardized version. I can now understand why it's a seal. Anko was furious and glaring at Sora when Sarutobi grabbed her and pulled her back. Anko, calm down, Sarutobi said. Enough, Anko, this man has my full trust. He turned to face Sora, who was a little alarmed. And you? I told you it was personal. You should not have toyed with her, he said. Sora nodded. I meant what I said. What I meant by asking of the curse seal is that I believed it to be a demon's mating mark at first, therefore I was confused when she referred to it in such a manner. To be honest, that seal is a bastardized mating mark. One am no seal expert, but you cannot remove that mark through sealing, at least to my knowledge. So I can never be free of him? Crumbled Anko. Sora murmured, did I not just say I can remove it? Well, not so much remove as replace with something far more beneficial. With suspicious and hopeful eyes, Anko asked him, what do you mean replace? Sora glanced at her and replied, simple. A stronger demon or dragon can overpower this seal and turn it into their own mate mark. This would free you from him, whoever he is, but you would be bonded to another until you die. Sarutobi said, now hold on a minute, Anko, think this through carefully. Sora, you too, after all you would be her mate, correct? Sora gave a nod and Anko pondered, yes I would. However, I have been alone for most of my life. I would not mind marking her and letting her do as she pleases. I can tell a mask when I see one. Sarutobi Naruto wears his still, although his silliness has actually rubbed into his personality. What does being a mate entail? Anko asked, glancing at Sora. Well, basically mates are husband and wife, sexual partners, lovers, etc., etc., Sora said, looking at her with a hint of surprise. Anko appeared somewhat cautious. She maintained her virginity for many years, despite what many people think, and she had no intention of giving it up to a man she barely knew. The only reason she wore this attire was to divert her adversaries. She answered, "I'll have to think about it." "Fair enough," Sora replied, "but will you help me train Naruto?" She replied, "Yeah, alright, but the Gaki better not be like the rest of these villagers or he's gonna be a pincushion." "You have no idea," Sora said with a laugh as they left. Sarutobi simply sighed. He grinned and said, "Maybe, just maybe, he can break that mask," after glancing at Anko's retrenchment and then at Sora's. Clinic in Inuzuka. 1 p.m. With Shiroi in his arms, Naruto entered. She was not yet fully grown, but she was now marginally bigger than a newborn kitten. Fortunately, she was still small enough to fit in his side pocket, but those days would soon come to an end. Hana grinned as she glanced up from behind the counter. She missed Naruto, even though she wouldn't confess it to anyone but herself. "Hey Hana-chan. Shiroi grew a little, so I want to make sure she's growing fine, plus I haven't seen you in a while," Naruto replied with enthusiasm. Hana blushed slightly at the thought of him wanting to see her. "Hey Naruto-kun, it's good to see you two. Come to the back and we can get little Shiroi-chan a checkup." She started using jutsu on Shiroi, who was sitting quietly. As they entered the back, Hana asked naively, "So Naruto, what have you been up to lately?" Naruto grinned and remarked, "Oh, just training and getting stronger, Hana-chan." Saying, "You must be pretty strong by now, huh?" Hana returned the smile. The compliment seemed to light up Naruto, who said, "Yep, Aniki said I could probably take a Chunin in taijutsu now." Hana replied, "If Sora-san said so, then it must be true. He is a good fighter after all." "Yeah, it's great to have him train me. His breakfasts are great, but he never has time to make me anything for lunch," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. So you never have lunch?" Hana asked, continuing to use meaningless jutsu after finishing with Shiroi. With a slight pause in his voice, Naruto said, "No, I usually just make myself a sandwich or something because he won't let me have ramen." He laughed and scratched his head, which Hana now realized indicated he was nervous. "But it's fine, after all I never had anyone to make me food anyways," he said. She was depressed at the same time, thinking, "No one has ever made him lunch. Mom made my bentos when I went to school, and she taught me how to do it when she wasn't busy. Now that I consider it, he hasn't had anyone, has he? Well, that's going to change," she thought firmly, "and perhaps we can use this to our benefit." Hana didn't seem to notice at the time, but her feral side kicked in. Hana smiled and said, "Hey Naruto-kun, how about we have lunch together tomorrow at the Hokage monument?" Really, Hana-chan?" Naruto inquired, his eyes bright. Hana responded, "Sure Naruto-kun, I would enjoy spending some time with you. Possibly we can do more than just spend time with him," she said. "No bad feral side. He is currently only 13 years old." Hana pondered. Naruto thought, could this be considered a date? And said, "Thanks Hana-chan, I'll be there say 11:30. I sincerely hope so. It's been nearly 2 years since I first tried to get her to notice me." "Well, Shiroi is all fine. I'm glad to see you taking such good care of her," Hana said, nodding. Naruto continued to beam. "Ah well, before I forget, tomorrow evening a bunch of the Genins and Junin sensei are gathering at a local karaoke bar for dinner. Would you like to come?" "Sure, why not? It'll be fun. Kurenai is a Junin sensei. Will she be there?" Hana asked herself after giving it some thought. "Yeah, she's the one who suggested the bar and is asking the other senseis," Naruto said with a furious nod. "Good, I'll see you tomorrow and don't bring anything, okay?" said Hana with a smile. After giving a nod, Naruto lifted Shiroi before he could open the door. He stopped and said, "CYA tomorrow Hana-chan," and vanished. She chuckled after grinning. She was going to enjoy herself tomorrow. 7 p.m. At Naruto's house. Naruto wandered the streets for a while before entering. He said, "Yo bro, are you home yet?" Sora responded from the tiny kitchen, "Yeah Naruto, I'm in the kitchen. Dinner'll be done in a minute." After nodding, Naruto set the table for him and his brother and then gave Shiroi some raw meat, which he eyed hungrily before turning into a blur of white and claws as she licked her paw. She abruptly stopped and her dish began to spin in an anime fashion. Not a scrap of meat or drop of blood remains. Naruto grinned and exclaimed, "I swear you're worse than me, Shiroi-chan." Before Sora yelled, "Dinner's ready Naruto." Naruto chuckled and approached the table. After she appeared to give him a sheepish smile, Shiroi immediately jumped into his lap, curled into a ball, and fell asleep as soon as he sat down. "We had curry and rice for dinner, nothing fancy." "Hey Aniki. Tomorrow night me and the other Genin teams are going to a karaoke bar. You wanna come?" replied Naruto. Sora remarked, Sure, should be fun right?" Sora grinned and said, "Of course, lunch is gonna be more fun right Otuto?" Naruto grinned and said, "Yeah, it should." His eyes appeared to take a distant look. After a few moments of sputtered red face, Naruto nervously responded, "What could you mean, Iniki?" Sora laughed. "You should really learn to destroy your scent even if you aren't training, Naruto. I can smell Hana's scent all over you." Naruto turned red and sighed. "She asked me to join her for lunch tomorrow atop the monument thing, as I don't know if it's a date or just because she pities me and I do not want to be pitied. Listen. Just go with the flow, do what comes naturally, and whatever you do, don't insult her cooking." Sora became serious, realizing that this was not the time to tease Naruto because he knew he had no experience. "I think she doesn't pity you as much as she just wants you to be happy." After giving it some thought, Naruto grinned and said, "Thanks, Iniki, I'll do that." "Good, relax and it'll be easier, alright?" Sora said with a smile. Naruto gave a nod. They both went to bed after Sora said, "Good, now get to bed. You can train lightly in the morning before taking a shower before lunch." One has aspirations for the future, while the other has dreams of a goddess with brown hair. Midnight. "No specific location, report," said a dark figure. A monotone voice answered, "Sir, the one known as Sora seems to be training the Kyuubi child." "I see. Continue observation until such time as I recall you do not get caught," the figure replied. The monotone voice said, "Hi Shisho," and vanished into the night. The figure was struck by the shifting moon. Danzo pondered this information while seated in his chair. "I'll discover your plans and seize the Kyuubi's power for myself." Day next. 11:25 a.m. Hana grinned. She had just finished preparing the blanket, a variety of sushi, and multiple bowls of homemade ramen for Naruto. With her mother's approval, she had closed the clinic for the day. I quote her when she says, "Mate with the dragon and give me grandpups to spoil already." Hana naturally blushed red and screamed at her mother for that. But the more time that went by, the more her feral side became active. The fact that she had dreamed about his appearance upon his return the night before didn't help either. "That long hard, all those muscles, hold it, Hana. He hasn't arrived yet, geez, am I that aroused?" She asked herself. "Yes, you foolish girl. You're 17 years old, almost 18 years old, and you haven't found a partner yet. Of course you're lustful." Her savage side answered, "Okay, so I'm horny, but I'll have to wait 3 months." She pondered, "You can still fulfill your need for companionship even if it's just for sex." "Hey Hana-chan," was the first thing Naruto said to Hana as he entered the clearing. The reply was, "Good Naruto, I'm glad you made it." Hana grinned. As he sat down, Naruto smiled and sniffed the food, saying, "Of course, I wouldn't miss this for the world. This ramen smells heavenly." With a slight flush, Hana said, "Thank you, I worked hard on them. I hope you like them." Damn, she's cute when she blushes, Naruto thought. Copying Hana's blushing fashion, he took a bite and grinned. He yelled, "Amazing. What did you do to this ramen? I've never tasted this before," as his eyes grew wide and he nearly dropped the bowl. "Nothing. It's just regular steak ramen with the Inuzuka spices in it," she said, smiling and blushing slightly. "You gotta make me some more when we have lunch again," he said with a radiant smile. She munched on her sushi in silence, a little surprised. Was that what he truly meant? "I take it that he wants to eat lunch once more." "Oh, I guess she didn't want to have lunch with me again," thought Naruto while feeling a little alarmed. Naruto sadly said, I'm sorry Hana, I didn't mean to force you to cook for me again." "Why is he sad? I thought he wanted me to do it again, huh?" she asked. "I mean, you don't have to do this again, Hana. I appreciate the thought, but I don't like being pitied," Naruto responded. "He asked me to repeat it, and now he's saying I don't have to? Why would oh no, he assumed I didn't want to because I was silent? I'm sorry, I forgot you haven't had much interaction," Hana said, glancing directly at Naruto. Naruto questioned, "What's wrong, Hana-chan?" She decided to come out with it after blushing. He'd never figure it out anyway. "Listen Naruto, I do want to cook for you again. I was just embarrassed you liked it so much. Also, I'm not pitying you. You always bring a smile to my face just by being around me, so I just wanted to return the favor." She was blushing more deeply. "Besides, I'd like to spend more time with you." Naruto looked shocked. Did she want to be with him more? He was never told that. After 3 minutes or so, Hana became irritated. With a snap of her fingers, she exclaimed, "Yo Earth," to Naruto-kun, in front of his face. "Huh? Oh yeah, sorry Hana-chan, it's just, are you sure? I know the villagers don't treat people who associate with me well," and Naruto replied. Hana interrupted him. "Those people are fools. You are one of the kindest people I know, Naruto, and to mention one of a very small portion of men who aren't perverted, and why wouldn't I want to be around someone who makes me smile?" she replied with a grin. Smiled. Well then I'd be more than happy to have lunch with you any day, Hana-chan. But can we try and keep it low-key? I don't want you being persecuted if I can help it. Fine, if you want, but don't expect me to back down if someone insults you, Hana said with a sigh after nodding. Naruto nodded, but he was doing a crazy Bugs Bunny in his head. She wants to spend more time with me. You know how he bounces off every wall and all that stuff? Yeah, that. Perhaps she also likes me? Hana laughed. Why don't we go get ready for the karaoke tonight? It's already 3. I'll see you there, Hana-chan, Naruto said, nodding. After packing the lunch and hurriedly walking home to get ready, Hana grinned and said, Sure, Naruto-kun, see you there. She was curious about tonight's events. Karaoke bar. 7 p.m. Almost everyone had arrived naturally. Sakura, Kakashi, and Sasuke had skipped out, and Neji, a member of Team 9, had not shown up, but Choji, Shikamaru, Ino, Hinata, Kiba, Naruto, Lee, Tenten, Yugao, Hayate, Yugo's fiancé copyright, Hana, Kurenai, Guy, Asuma. Since Kurenai pulled him, Sora, and even Anko had appeared. Although there were a lot of people there, the place wasn't particularly crowded. However, by far the largest group was theirs. Everyone reintroduced themselves using the same general concept as the Chunin exams after Kurenai tapped her glass and said, Now that we are all here, why don't we say a little about ourselves? I won't type everything out because it would be a waste of both your and my time. Hayate and Yugao were passionate about swords and one another naturally. Anko enjoyed torturing snakes, but they were taken aback when she said she enjoyed reptiles in general naturally. Guy and Lee also got into a heated argument about the flames of youth. It unexpectedly came to an end when Sora outwitted them by stating in her Flames of Youth speech how unyouthful it was to scream inside. Needless to say, he was thanked by all Tenten and Jonin. Teams tended to sit together, with Anko sitting close to Sora in the hopes of finding out more about him and Naruto beside Hana. Soon after, the show began, and everyone watched as they sang along. Naturally, that's what girls do, was sung by Ino. Tenten declined, saying it wasn't her thing, and Naruto, well, let's see. Choji and Shikamaru both declined. Hayate couldn't sing due to his condition, and Yugao didn't sing out of respect for him. Kiba sang. Who let the dogs out? Hinata almost passed out again when asked. Hana said she couldn't sing. Despite Naruto's encouragement, Sora sang a song called Where Dragons Rule by Dragon Force. I know you can sing, Naruto, come on, Sora uttered those words. Can he now? He had better do it or you won't be getting lunches anymore. Kiba was aware of this, but he would get him later. Hana teased him. Alright, Naruto sighed, I'll sing, but you owe me twice as much ramen this week, Sora. He created a few shadow clones and instructed them to gather the various instruments. What is he doing? Hana inquired when he was finished in the library. He sent Kage Bunshin to learn how to play. Sora laughed. If my memory serves me correctly, he's pretty good. Shish, it's just getting started. Lincoln Park. A place where I fit in. When this started, there was nothing I could say and I lose myself in my inner emptiness. I didn't understand, and I revealed everything to find that I'm not alone in thinking about these things. Within myself, however, all they can see are the words that were revealed. Is the only genuine emotion I still have. There is nothing to lose. Simply trapped, empty, and alone. Additionally, I am the one who is at fault. Music, I want to recover and experience what I believe to be unreal. I want to let go of the suffering I've endured for so long. Delete the pain until it is gone. I want to get better and feel like I'm getting close to something genuine. I'm looking for something I've always desired. Somewhere I'm welcome. Furthermore, I have nothing to say. It's unbelievable that I didn't fall face first. I didn't understand, searching everywhere but failing to locate. That everything isn't how I had mentally pictured it. So, who am I? I have nothing but negativity since everyone is staring at me. I am unable to defend my actions. There is nothing to lose, hollow, alone, and with nothing to gain. Additionally, I am the one who is at fault. Repeat the chorus. Until I complete this on my own, I will never know myself. And until my wounds are healed, I won't experience anything else. Until I separate from myself, I will never be anything. I'll separate and discover who I am today. Repeat the chorus. I want to get better and feel like I belong. I want to get better and feel like I belong. Somewhere I'm welcome. As the song came to an end, the bar was silent, and everyone could see the emotion Naruto had put into it. Most of the adults there understood what he meant when he said that he had found somewhere, but only 2 understood when he said that the fault was his own. Hana almost burst into tears. but she held back, even though she looked directly at Naruto to let him know that she was watching Sora. On the other hand, he cried Ryujin had wept for his brother for the second time in less than a year, and since no one but Hana understood why, they just put it down to his own past. I don't understand, Ino said, noticing and opening her large mouth. I won't criticize her too much. Sometimes she just needs to stop talking so much. Naruto is singing about belonging somewhere, but why? Isn't Konoha where he belongs? He sighed and wiped his eyes, saying, he has never belonged in Konoha. Ino. Sora almost glared before he realized she was uninformed. You guys didn't really care to look at him, but if you had you would see the unwarranted looks and hate he receives. He is unable to enter 90% of Konoha's stores, and the 9% that do allow him entry charge exorbitant prices for useless goods. He probably just pranked all of them, Ino sneered thus. They are unwilling to serve him. Naruto had returned by this point, but he was merely sitting and listening. He's not lying, Ino, snarled Hana. Even though Naruto pulls some pretty spectacular practical jokes, it never hurts a company. But I have first-hand experience with grocers selling him out-of-date and expired food. There are only 3 or 4 locations in the city where he can enter without being ejected, including the clinic. Sensei, we were taught in school that Konoha values teamwork over everything else. Why would we treat one of our own like this? Ino asked her sensei, while Naruto was crying with joy and sighed. Ino, you've always had a roof over your head and parents to feed you, haven't you? Naruto said. Of course, Ino said, turning back to Naruto. However, you lived at the orphanage because you were an orphan, correct? Sure, for 5 years, sneered Naruto. Tell me, Ino, if the orphanage didn't want me, then why would Konoha want me? I was expelled on my birthday, October 10th, when I was 5 years old, for, quote, demons don't need a home. The adults, however, had a variety of reactions. For once, Guy was serious and had a very depressed expression on his face. Sora was gritting his teeth. Hana was looking down, sad that she hadn't helped sooner. And Ino, along with the other children, was shocked. Kurenai, Asuma, Hayate, and Yugo were wondering how in the world the Hokage allowed that to happen. And Anko was experiencing flashbacks to the time Orochimaru left her. I won't explain why she referred to me as a demon, not yet. Perhaps after I have more faith in you, I will tell you, but know that adults are powerless to speak, Naruto said sorrowfully. With a sigh, Shikamaru said, troublesome blonde. Well, I'm tired, so I'm going to head home. Good night everyone. Seemed to lighten the mood a little. Everyone said their goodbyes, but the same question was on most people's minds. What exactly made Naruto so sad? Naruto said with a smile. Training Ground 8. The following day Naruto was in a great mood after returning from his now daily lunch with Hana, until he noticed that Sora was being chased around the training grounds by the crazy snake lady, as he now called her, because she was shooting snakes everywhere. Hey, Naruto. As he sprinted past him, Sora shouted. Come back here, you bastard, Anko shouted, and inadvertently began to attack Naruto as well, who was now running with Sora. Aniki, what in hell did you do to her? As he avoided a kunai snake combo, Naruto posed the question. She was described as a gorgeous snake princess by perhaps I shouldn't have done that. Dodging 8 snakes, Sora said. You said it yet again. With a roar, Anko intensified her attempts to transform them into pincushions. Keep your big trap closed the next time, man. Aniki, Naruto uttered. After 2 hours they all stopped when Anko finally calmed down, and Sora approached her after giving her a suspicious look. Thank you for your assistance today. Will you return tomorrow? Did he ask? A kunai struck between Sora's legs as he sat on the ground, and Anko gave him a charming smile before saying, call me that again and I'll kill you. Naruto burst out laughing after Sora initially appeared scared, and Anko and Sora joined him shortly after. He thought, man, her laugh is cute. That's Sora. It was going to be the beginning of a wonderful, terrible friendship. Exams in Chunin and Orochimaru. Naruto was on his way to his team's meeting spot on the day before the Chunin exams were to begin, and he knew that Kakashi had delayed telling them about the exams because he was just that lazy. Sora had been allowed to watch with the Chunin sensei, and he had actually become a little more amiable with the other genins over the past 2 months, even though Sakura and Sasuke continued to treat him badly, even though she stopped trying to hit him, possibly because he vowed to break her arm the next time she did. He laughed heartily at the thought. He still had his daily lunches with Hana, which had, surprisingly, led to them napping under a tree more than once. Naruto had a feeling she liked him the same way he liked her, but was a little scared to ask. That was just about the only thing that stayed constant over these 2 months. Naruto could now classify as Chunin in taijutsu, amazing what one can do when they are actually taught. Nay, His strength and speed was about that freaky Rock Lee's level. His elemental manipulation, well, he's done with that. Although it should be noted that Naruto focused on that more than learning the few jutsu Sora taught him. His Fuinjutsu training was going well. He would honestly put himself at about intermediate after getting that sealing book with notes on the side by some guy with the initials MN. He was close to making his sexy jutsu yaoi version into a seal for Kunoichi. Granted, he had taught it to Anko and Hana per their requests, and they would get some of the seals for free. He could dodge all the attacks from Anko, no matter how mad Sora got her, and that was something Naruto was rather curious about. Every day he would arrive for training, Sora had always pissed off Anko, and yet she seemed to smile all through it. She had taken to joining them for dinner this past week, and he could honestly say that he enjoyed her company. Naruto had already arrived at the bridge for his meeting. Sakura and Sasuke were there, but before Sakura could shout at him, Kakashi appeared in a puff of smoke. This was very unusual, though, because it was the right time for him to be here. His whole team was in disbelief, and Sakura even attempted to dispel a genjutsu. He grinned and said, "Hello team. You are my choice to take the Chunin exams. Take these forms, sign them, and bring them to room 301 tomorrow at 8 AM if you want to take part, Yane." And left 3 slips of paper behind, along with another, poof. Grabbing a slip, Naruto signed his name and exclaimed, "Yane." Sakura was swooning over the emo part, and Sasuke was brooding over the dobi, knowing Shunshin before vanishing in an electric Shunshin. Reappearing just outside of town, Naruto sighed and began to wander until it was time for his regular lunch date with Hana. To his surprise, Kiba had not yet noticed their interactions, and he was a little nervous about finding out because he and Kiba used to play practical jokes together. He didn't want to hurt Kiba just to be with Hana, but if that was the case, then so be it. Feeling a square box following him, Naruto shook his head and said, "Come out, guys," he said, "I know you're there." After Konohamaru and the now identified Udon and Moegi coughed out the extra smoke, they performed an odd introductive dance that made Naruto's eye twitch. Naruto had first encountered Konohamaru when he attempted to attack the Hokage, and Naruto had seen him stumble and then blame it all on him. The closet pervert then appeared and enraged Naruto with his shortcut to Hokage speech, accusing him of being filth. After Naruto had defeated Konohamaru, the child started calling Naruto boss and attempting to receive training. With a sigh, Naruto said, "That was awful. You introduced yourself without really leaving a calling card. You used too much powder, and rocks aren't square." Konohamaru said, "Sorry to disappoint you, boss." They all cast disappointed glances down. "Raise your heads, guys," said Naruto, shaking his head. "Look, you can learn from your mistakes. If you don't succeed the first time, try harder. Anything you set your mind to, you can achieve if you put in enough effort." Konohamaru said, "In that case, boss, play ninja with us." As they all grinned broadly, "You can look for us, and we'll hide." "Sure kid," Naruto said with a bright smile, "I'll give you guys a 30-second head start." A loud, oof, was heard after 3, yada-s, and they left around the corner, and Naruto hurried around the corner to apologize for what they had done. As he turned the corner, Naruto saw 2 sand ninjas. A female with 4 pigtails and a battle kimono, and one who appeared to be wearing paint. Cough makeup cough. Holding Konohamaru while his 2 friends lay on the ground, looking terrified. "Hey kid, are you unaware that bumping into someone is impolite? Perhaps I ought to give you a lesson," he said. "Kankuro, just leave the brat alone," the woman said. "If he shows up, you don't want to be caught, do you?" Sneering, Kankuro said, "Tamari, stop talking. These leaves are feeble. Simply put, he needs a lesson." As he lifted his hand to hit Konohamaru, he suddenly found himself holding a haori. After placing Konohamaru next to his companions, Naruto turned to Kankuro and said, "You know the Hokage wouldn't want you to harm his grandson. Chunin exams are not, however. Try that with one of my friends once more." He turned to face Kankuro, his eyes briefly flashing gold and turning into slits, saying, "I'll kill you." That sent a shiver down both of the nin's spines. The only one who could do that was Gaara. Naruto turned to the tree. "You with the bloody sand, come down here." "Kankuro, you are a disgrace to the village and to me." Gaara emerged in a whirlpool of sand, and the sand nin's eyes widened as a gravelly voice resounded from the tree. "You are strong," he said to Naruto. "Mom says to watch out for you," he said. "I have no idea who this mother is, but she's probably right," Naruto said, tilting his head to the side. Bags under the eyes, crazy glint, sand mastery, Su Ichibi no Tanuki." After a few minutes of staring, Gaara answered, "Who are you?" "You and Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto retorted, Gaara no Suna, Gaara said. Nodding, I hope to see you again. With that declaration, he turned and departed, swiftly followed by his siblings. Shukaku must have been strong if he was afraid of this individual. It's funny that the first ninjas to perceive him as strong weren't from Konoha, huh? Oh crap, said Naruto, shaking his head and glancing at the clock. I will be late. After waving goodbye to Naruto, the three kids went off to play ninja alone. See you later, guys. Monument Summit. 12:02 a.m. Hana was waiting for Naruto, who rarely misses meetings, and she smiled when she saw him running, more like bolting, up the stairs and breathing heavily. They had become close over the past 2 months, and she could honestly say that she liked the blonde ball of energy. She wondered why he hadn't made a more open move on her when it had hit her last night, and she recalled their first lunch together, which helped her realize that he was either scared or dense. She smirked as he reached the last stretch, knowing that she wouldn't allow him to remain scared, and if it meant dragging him into a back room, she would do it by Kami. With a dazzling grin, Naruto said, "Hello, Hana-chan. I apologize for being late. We encountered some sand ninjas while Konohamaru and the group wanted to play." Hana scowled. "Are you okay? You weren't harmed by them?" "No," Naruto said, shaking his head. "For them, I was too good." "Well, come on then, it's time for lunch," she said with a laugh. He nodded and sat down as usual. They talked back and forth for the majority of lunch, and after an hour or so, Hana had to return to the clinic, but she decided she had to know something first because it had been on her mind the entire time. "Hi, Naruto?" With her legs in a V-shape, her hair cascading behind her arm, and her body positioned so she was leaning sideways on her right hand facing him, Hana asked, giving him a seductive look. "Damn, she looks sexy." Naruto gulped. "Why yes, Hana-chan. What do you think of me?" Hana laughed inwardly. "Looks like I already know the answer. That doesn't mean you can't have some fun anyway." Yeah, keep your panties on." Feral sighed groans. Innocently, she inquired. "Do I tell her? Do I not? What happens if she doesn't like me too?" 1,000 of these thoughts rushed through his mind before his dragon side silently pushed it to rest on one. "I'll never know if I don't say anything," Naruto swallowed and answered. Well, I think you beautiful and kind, intelligent, and gifted." I could continue, but I think I'll just be content with Tenchi, Angel. Though somewhat surprised by his remarks, Hana questioned, "Why Tenchi?" With a gentle smile, Naruto remarked, "Everything is imperfect, with the possible exception of the gods. Sora claims that angels are the closest thing to that perfection and that they deliver people from evil." "You're my angel," he said. Looking directly into her eyes, "The elderly man was the only person who showed me kindness even though you were unaware of it. You were always there for me. That's the reason I say angel." Hana was so happy that she was on the verge of tears. She hadn't really meant to do any of those things, but she could tell by the look in his eyes that he loved her. Of all the things she knew about Naruto, she knew that winning his love was probably the hardest thing to do. Even Sora hadn't wormed his way into Hana's heart the way Hana had, and she wasn't even trying to do it at the time. All she wanted was to be near him. They were both blushing crimson when the need for air broke them apart. Naruto was trying to gauge her reaction to that, and when she remained silent with her mouth slightly open, he was a little worried that, of course, faded when he felt something being pressed against his lips. He relaxed slowly and returned the kiss rather sloppily. After taking a deep breath, Naruto exclaimed, "Sue, does that mean what I think it?" Hana's lips interrupted him once more, and she withdrew, keeping her hand behind his head, and said quietly, "Does that answer your question?" With a gentle smile, Naruto said, "Yeah, that's a good response." "All right," Hana laughed. "Can you tidy up for me?" "I have to leave, thank you," Naruto said, nodding. "Before you go to the Chunin exams tomorrow, please make sure to visit the Inuzuka clinic." She left after laughing at Naruto's awe-stricken expression, and Naruto nodded once more before giving her a chaste kiss. A shit-eating grin slowly appeared on Naruto's face. "Ya hhhhhho." It goes without saying that the entire village heard the yell, and Hana's face flushed red as she entered the clinic. Alongside Sora, he still remembered that first day nearly 5 weeks ago when he asked her out on a semi-date. Sora was currently sitting in a dango bar with Anko. It seemed that she really warmed up to him after that first day, asking him questions about him or the dragons after evasion training while they watched Naruto do his elemental training. Demon style of the author. Jutsu no flashback. Sora was bored at around 11:45, and Naruto really just needed some guidance to learn the style. After weeks of helping him, Sora had been able to fix the terrible katas with Naruto's basic agility and learning ability, and once he had the basics, he took off like a rocket to space. He sighed, and then there was that whole thing with Anko. He didn't know why he really offered to morph the mark. Heck, it had been on the spur of the moment. Still, he didn't regret it yet. Anko had entered the training ground and found Sora sitting there. She had spent the last 3 weeks getting to know him better. He had a favorite color, silver, tacos, watching the moon, flying, and so on. She hadn't even realized until today that he called her hubby Heim, Snake Princess. But she didn't take offense when he called her that she had wanted some company for lunch today for some reason. And now she was at the training grounds, where, conveniently, only Sora was present. She stared for a few seconds before turning around and attempting to get away before he noticed her. "Hey, hubby Heim, too late," she said, closing her eyes. "What did I tell you about calling me that?" she asked, turning around with a twitchy eye. "Not to, but you know it really suits you," Sora said after chuckling and giving his head a very Naruto-like rub. "In addition, I figured you might want to grab a bite to eat after all. Lunch is almost here." She would have let her jaw drop if Anko had been less emotionally in control. Did he just read my mind? She asked herself. As he was leaving the training grounds, Sora said, "Of course, if you don't want a free lunch of dangos and red bean paste, then it's your loss." He was pinned to a tree with Anko pressing herself against him, and he raised an eyebrow, thinking, "I'll take it this means a yes?" He inquired, but she just took hold of his hand and dragged him across town to a dango bar while muttering something about free dango and silver-haired gods. Sora was just laughing, and he had no idea that this would turn into a lunch that was similar to the lunches Naruto and Hana had, so it's an everyday occurrence. Author Angel style. Jutsu Kai no flashback. Sora laughed at the recollection and watched as his friend, training partner gobbled up her dango with more fervor than most people could possibly match, let alone surpass. "You are the proctor for the second test, aren't you?" Sora inquired. "Yes. Don't inquire, I can't divulge information. Make sure Naruto is prepared for mind games," though Anko remarked. "I am aware that Ibiki is the first proctor." "Thanks," Sora said, nodding. "I'll see you tonight, then." "Why, Sora-kun, I didn't think you'd be so bold," Anko said with a seductive smile. He said huskily, "Only if you want me to be hubby Heim." Sora just grinned back and got in her face. They would constantly try to outdo each other with sexual innuendos, and it was actually kind of entertaining if Sora confessed. This one in particular, however, had sent chills down their spines. It would be interesting to see all those genin trying to fight Naruto, but as he ran across the rooftops, he remembered the Chunin who nominated their teams for the exam. Anko just nodded her head, and Sora left knowing that she would be there for dinner. Author Demon style. Jutsu no flashback. Sora here will be with the senseis throughout the length of the exams before we get into the nominations, said Sarutobi, clearing his throat. Hokage-sama, he is not a sensei, why would you allow him the privilege? Kakashi said, arriving on time only because the Hokage informed him that the actual meeting had taken place 3 hours earlier. Perhaps you should trust in your leader Hitaki-san? Sora interrupted. I'm sure he has his reasons. Instead of flatly rejecting me, perhaps you should try to understand why I am there. You're the one who talks about seeing beneath the surface. Remarkably, that silenced the majority of people. The Hokage refused to let him in without a valid reason, so he was right. In any event, would the rookie sensei please present the nominations? Said Sarutobi. Asuma came forward and said, I nominate Team 10 comprised of Ino Yamanaka, Shoji Akamichi, and Shikamaru Nara for the Chunin exams. Kurenai came forward and said, I nominate Team 8 comprised of Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame for the Chunin exams. Kakashi came forward and said, I nominate Team 7 comprised of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki for the Chunin exams. Everyone appeared quite surprised. No rookie team, much less all three, had received nominations in a very long time. Iruka came forward. Now hold on a minute. These students were under me not even a year ago. How can you proclaim them to be powerful or for that matter mature enough to be a Chunin? They were your students, now they're ours. Perhaps you should believe what we are telling you, Kakashi said, turning to face Iruka. Subtly scoffed, perhaps Shino and Shikamaru are mature enough, Shino may be strong enough, but the rest needs serious work. Kiba is too hot-headed, Sasuke is arrogant, Ino and Sakura are still fangirls, Hinata, she needs more confidence but that is her family's fault, Shoji is a wild card. I honestly don't know enough about him, and Naruto. I won't go into him cause I honestly have no idea what he is fully capable of. Sarutobi sighed at the way he deffed Naruto as the majority of the Chunin appeared impressed with his breakdown, though the senseis were a little irritated by his descriptions and remained silent for some reason they couldn't comprehend. However, if you wish for them to get some real experience with truly trained ninja, this is a good starting ground in a somewhat controlled environment. They remember, even though it's a very subconscious thing, hey, You guys don't think they've completely forgotten the tongue lashing he gave them, huh? They all nodded and filed out some keeping notice on Sora after Sarutobi said, "Very well then, the Chunin exams will be held 1 week from today. Dismissed." Author Angel Style. No Jutsu Kai flashback. When Sora got home, she made dinner, which was a quiet gathering before everyone went to bed. It was a big day tomorrow. Compound in Inuzuka. 7 p.m. Kiba shouted, "Ka-san, Ne-san, I'm home." As he entered he grinned instantly as soon as he smelled the air. His favorite food is steak and gravy topped mashed potatoes. From the kitchen, Hana shouted, "Get washed up. Dinner is almost cooked." Runt. Kiba snarled at the moniker, but she ignored it since she was preparing his favorite meal. When his sister brought them to the dinner table, he hurriedly cleaned up and sat down to eat with his mother before Sume shifted the topic to Hana. They discussed Kiba's training, which was going well. Sume smirked and said, "So Hana, how have you and that little dragon been getting along?" "I don't think that's any of your business, mother," Hana said, blushing slightly. "Au contraire, my pup," Sume said with a broader grin. "I have a vested interest in whom you date." Kiba burst into tears. "What? Date? Who is this little dragon you're talking about, and where is he so I can make sure he is worthy of my sister? Are you implying I can't choose my own mate?" Runt? Hana asked in a rage. Kiba, shut your mouth for a moment. Hana, seriously, how has he been doing? Is he treating you well? Sume interrupted Kiba after he stammered for a few seconds. "It's going well, Mom. He's a bit dense, but today we kissed and although he's sloppy I could tell he wanted more." Hana sighed, but she couldn't pretend to be caring to her mother. She blushed profusely before adding, "He called me his tenchi because I paid attention to him." "Good, he'll make a good mate. Now hurry up and give me blonde-haired grandpups to spoil," Sume told with a smile. In addition to the dogs, who by this point had completed their meals and joined their respective owners, Kiba and Hana both started to perspire. Kiba noticed something despite the perspiration. Blonde-haired. The only blonde I know who has been around Hana is Naruto, he thought. Then, in a different area of the city, Naruto suddenly felt a chill go down his spine. "You dating Naruto?" Kiba said, almost leaping from his seat. He let out a roar. A little irritated, Hana said, "Sit down, Runt." "Yes, Naruto and I are dating. What does it mean to you?" "Naruto is a dead last and a loser," Kiba said, appearing to be about to have a heart attack. "He is not a worthy partner in any way." Hana had already buried his face in the ground before Kiba could finish his sentence. "You know, I expected better from someone Naruto would call a friend," she said smolderingly. "Mom, I'm going to bed. Inform the hothead that before passing judgment on Naruto, he should get to know him." Sume sighed and put him in his room, saying she would take care of it tomorrow. She nodded and saw that Kiba was unconscious, with Akamaru whimpering at his predicament. Chunin exam begins at 7:15 a.m. at Inuzuka compound. Since today was the first time he could call Hana his girlfriend, Naruto was in a great mood as he approached the compound. However, for some reason, Sora had forced him to bring Shiroi, and he had given Naruto a scroll that read, "Open this if you get into a fight." Naruto looked at Shiroi, who was walking proudly next to him. "It will be very helpful," he said, laughing as the compound came into view. She was about the size of a household cat, but she had sharpened claws and teeth. Hana was waiting for Naruto, who had to arrive at the clinic by 8 o'clock, and she knew he would be here soon because he had to show up early for the exams. Fortunately, the street appeared to be empty this early in the morning, so she smiled when she saw him walking up the street with Shiroi by his side. She narrowed her eyes and stared at Shiroi, who appeared to have undergone training similar to that which her nin dogs had undergone. Couldn't be. Foxes aren't allied to any clan. Besides, she didn't have that walk or that look about her until today. She waved at Naruto eagerly. Naruto increased his speed and ran toward Hana, who looked a little alarmed and said, "There's no way he's gonna stop in time." At the same time, Naruto was laughing to himself. He grabbed Hana by the waist and twirled her in the air. Stopping himself with the twirl, Hana laughed uncontrollably as she twirled. Naruto had never been this daring before, but she enjoyed it as he put her down. She burst out another giggle. "For what purpose was that?" she inquired. "That? I simply had the urge to make you laugh, so I did," Naruto replied with a radiant smile. "All right," said Hana with a smile, "but we must start moving quickly. I wished you luck on your upcoming tests." A moment of frowning was followed by a nod, and Naruto said, "Thanks Hana Tenchi." "Hey Naruto," was Hana's seductive reply after blushing and then grinning devilishly. Naruto swallowed, recognizing that expression. "Why yes, Tenchi?" Before giving him a deep kiss, Hana took hold of his head and snaked an arm around his neck. Naruto was prepared for this, so he slid a hand behind her neck and another to her tight butt. Hana grinned inwardly, pleased that he had figured it out so quickly, and she slid both arms around his neck. Naruto grabbed her ass and, when she groaned a little, stuck his tongue in her mouth, beginning a little tongue war as she was thanking Kami and all the other gods she had captured. Naruto, she interrupted herself with a loud sigh. Naruto, leave my sister alone. How dare this dead last loser think he can make out with my sister, Kiba roared. Having just stepped outside on his way to the academy and seen Hana making out with Naruto of all people, Kiba had remembered the conversation from last night, but he had written it off as a bad state nightmare. Even Shiroi had a tick on her head, and Kiba interrupted their first real makeout session while Hana and Naruto were both officially in a murderous rage. Kiba, what I do with your sister is none of your business. While Hana was thinking, well, we are outside, but still, Runt shouldn't have interrupted us, Naruto remarked. I suggest you leave before things get ugly, he thought. She may not be my mate yet, but no one interrupts my alone time. Kiba responded, you aren't worthy of my sister, Dobi. Despite feeling a little intimidated by the key that was directed at him, leave before I force you to leave. Everyone froze just as Hana was about to reply. Sume had come outside, looking exhausted and angry. Can someone please explain to me why I am up at 7:30 a.m. when today is my day off? What the hell is wrong, Kiba? She asked, and Naruto and Hana merely pointed at the trembling Kiba. Who? Ipad? Sume questioned sharply. Though a little unsteadily, Kiba answered, Mom, Hana and Naruto were making out. Naruto isn't strong enough to do that. Sume gave Kiba a head slap, which caused him to stop talking. For the past 2 months, Kiba, Hana and Naruto have been eating lunch together every day. I accepted his status as your sister's possible mate 3 months ago in addition to his alpha status, Sume wisely said. You should trust your sister's judgment. Pop, after glancing at each of them, she said, now, if you don't hurry, you will all be late, so get a move on. Naturally, they all dispersed, but not before Hana and Naruto exchanged a quick kiss for good fortune. Naruto and Kiba remained silent for the majority of the walk. 7:50 a.m. Academy School. Naruto approached his teammates, who gave him an irritated glare and said, you are nearly late. Baka. Let's move quickly before you cause us to fail. Sakura uttered those words. When they reached a room with 2, apparently older genin blocking the doorway to the room with 301 at the top, Naruto sighed and waved his hand, signaling that he was ready to enter, and they all entered. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he watched Lee be put down, thinking, must be acting weak to confuse opponents. Besides, that's a genjutsu. We only went up 2 floors. Naturally, Sasuke had to be a brazen brat, saying, hey, let me pass, and drop the genjutsu. I have to go to the real room. Naruto almost gave a face when he saw that Lee was standing next to Sakura and declaring his unwavering love and protection for her. Naruto merely said hello to Lee and Tenten before turning to face their teammate Neji Hyuga, who put a stick up his ass. He thought as he scoffed and turned away. Following a brief altercation between Lee and Sasuke, they entered the exams room and looked around. Naruto sensed that people were sending ki at them to test them, so he scoffed in silence, then flared his own ki, which was about low Junin, and took a corner next to Rookie 9. He eyed the competition and made a note to avoid the sand team and that grass nin who eyed Sasuke like a slab of meat. He then looked at his other classmates, noting that Sakura and Ino were fighting, of course, that Shikamaru, Choji, and Shino were eyeing the competition. Hinta was trying to hide, and Kiba and Sasuke appeared prepared for battle. Ma, stop making so much noise, those rain ninjas, do you see? A silver-haired genin said, they're really bloodthirsty. You can guess who said that, and you'll receive a cyber cookie. Kiba interrupted Sasuke's HMPH, saying, who are you and why should we listen to you? With a laugh, the silver-haired man introduced himself as Kabuto. I know a great deal about the various teams. After all, I've taken these tests 7 times. Kiba shivered. You're a jerk? No, he has a purpose. Nobody is that bad to fail 7 times with all the information. He might be a spy, Naruto said, almost flinching. If you have information, how about Gaara no Suna and Rock Lee? Said Sasuke. People were a little taken aback by Kiba's addition. Naruto Uzumaki, but they remained silent. Gaara no Suna, 37 D ranks, 13 C ranks, and 1 B rank. Let's see. Not bad for a genin. Tamari no Suna and Kankuro no Suna are teammates. He has never been hurt while on a mission, but I don't know much about his abilities. Amazing. It must be his sand shield, Kabuto said. And while Sasuke was prepared to fight him, most people mentally noted to stay away. 8 C ranks, 58 D ranks, and Rock Lee of Konoha, Tenten Higurashi and Neji Hyuga are teammates. His taijutsu is ranked at mid-Junin, but he has no nin or genjustice. Kabuto declared. He was the dead last of the academy. Sasuke was furious at his loss, and most people were once more taking notes to stay away from him. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he read the final card, which Kabuto had drawn out and charged with chakra. Some of this information is classified as a secret. No genin has access to that information, so he is a spy, he said, tearing it up as everyone else scowled. Deception and secrecy are an integral part of being a ninja, he said. Why should I let you know my secrets? Ibiki and the proctors appeared at the front of the room before he could reply. Sit down and shut up, you maggots. Everyone stopped, and they turned to face Ibiki, who gave them a fierce smile and said, come get your seating assignments, and once you are seated, I will explain the rules of this test. Everyone hurriedly took their seats and turned to face Ibiki. All right, so the first rule is that each person has 10 points in total. 1 point is awarded for each question with 10 minutes remaining in the exam. The 10th question will be asked out of the current 9. You've got an hour. Teams will share points, so if one person fails, the entire team fails. This irritated everyone, and Naruto felt 2 small jabs at him, which he dismissed. Silence. As soon as I say that, the exam will begin. If someone is caught cheating, their grades will be docked 2 points. Show off your Chunin skills and make us proud. Get started. Ibiki uttered those words. These questions are completely out of the range of a genin. Maybe Shikamaru or Sakura could answer a few, but definitely not the old me. Naruto became perplexed as everyone flipped the papers. Think of the test. 1 point per question, 10 questions total. Share points. 2 points for cheating. Wait, if we cheated at the academy, it was an automatic failure. If we are caught cheating and showing the skills of a Chunin, they want us to cheat? Naruto grinned and turned to Ibiki. Ibiki waved off the examiners that he hadn't cheated yet, thinking, that's confusing, he thought. What's that kid up to? Anko said he's really good. Naruto interrupted this with 3 puffs of smoke, leaving everyone wondering what he would do. He almost broke out in a cold sweat when the kid pulled out a deck of cards and began playing poker with his clones. What are you doing? He asked Naruto, he inquired. Naruto answered without raising his head. What does it look like to play poker? Of course, laughed Ibiki, but what about the test? Meh. I can't answer these, so I'll just hinge it on the last one, Naruto said after discarding 2 and gathering more before displaying a full house. The examiners shivered and crossed off more people as Ibiki grinned and bopped one of the clones to take its place, saying, deal me in, kid. 40-minute time skip. Good game. Youngster Ibiki stood up and said, look me up sometime, it'd be cool to play again. All right. So we still have 15 minutes, Naruto said, dispelling his clones. Ibiki nodded. Naruto smiled and picked up his paper. He walked over to Shikamaru and said, trade yaw. After eyeing him for a moment, Shikamaru muttered something, switched the papers, and filled in Naruto's. Naruto nodded and whispered in Shikamaru's ear, then lowered his head again. Your paper for mine, and in return I'll give you the best cloud watching spot in the city. Before Ibiki burst out laughing, everyone was in disbelief. Kid, that was brilliant. Didn't you know the test all along? Naruto laughed. Perhaps, perhaps not. Who knows? Ibiki shook his head and said, all right, it's time for the last query. However, there is an additional rule. You fail right now if you decide not to answer the question. If you decide to accept the question but give a wrong response. Everyone erupted in outrage and rage, saying, you will never be permitted to take the exams again. The first random 20-year-old genin stated, but there are people who have taken this exam before and are still here today. Hard people complained before more and more people quit, saying, 78 genin, huh? Anko will never let me live this down, but no more look like they will quit? Alright maggots, Ibiki said, adding, they didn't have me as a proctor before. For those of you who remain pass, congratulations. For a moment, everyone just kind of gaped, and then Tamari exploded, passed. What is the final query? There was no last question, Ibiki said with a laugh, or, to be more precise, the question was whether you were willing to take the last question as a Chunin squad leader. For instance, you are tasked with infiltrating and gathering specific information, but you have very little knowledge of the target and its surroundings. Is the mission too risky for you to accept, or do you turn it down? You're not providing enough information, Naruto said. Do you have faith in your team? Is the information significant enough to put those teammates' lives in danger? Will seduction indicate that a woman is better suited to take the lead? Overall, a solid synopsis, but insufficient details to enable a well-informed choice. However, because they are essential to the survival of your village, some missions must be accepted. With a big smile, Ibiki said, Naruto, good point. You demonstrated the confidence required to become Chunin by accepting the unknown mission. As he stated once again, congratulations. Anko Mitarashi, second examiner, sexy and single, was written on a banner before a huge ball exploded through the window. Oh god, Don't let her. With a groan, Naruto banged his head against the desk. Hey! Who made that statement? The majority of people perspired when Anko said, oh, it's just the dragon Gaki, never mind. Having a dragon user around helps with abilities. Anko appeared in a purple flame. Naruto got up and made his way to the door, saying, Oi! Where are you going, Gaki? Anko inquired, a little irritated. Only one location may host the second exams. If you are the proctor, I'll see you at the customary location. He disappeared in a blue lightning shunshin after that. A little irritated, Anko said, 78 Gaki, s. Hey, Biki-kun, you're softening. Nah, Ibiki said, laughing and shaking his head, we have a good crop and that kid that just walked out is very good. Okay. Then you maggots, meet me at training ground 44 in 5 minutes or you're disqualified. Anko grinned. She turned and said to Ibiki, so he's really that good, huh? Ibiki grinned and said, totally bypassed my scare tactics and played poker with me to the point I could barely read him. Ibiki was a master at reading people, and even Anko found it difficult to fool him. Good, well, I'll be going then. She vanished, and Ibiki shook his head before making his way to the Junin sensei room. Sensei Junin. 20 minutes prior to, many people were talking about the first exam, placing bets on who would pass, and other things. The rookie sensei, Guy, and Sora were discussing the first proctor. Sora was aware of Ibiki from Anko, but Kurenai needed an explanation. So, do you believe that your teams will survive Ibiki? Sora asked innocently, but Kakashi and Guy were both a little suspicious of the way he phrased it. Well, mine doesn't worry me. They're a capture and infiltration team that's almost like interrogation, Asuma remarked. This UNYOUTHFUL test will not defeat my youthful students. Guy uttered those words. Sora laughed and said, I am sure their flames of youth burn brightly with you as their sensei Guy-san. Kakashi almost dropped his book. Asuma appeared to be about to drop his cigarette. Kurenai was just shocked, and Guy was crying and shouting about flames of youth, all of which are copyrighted by Maeda Guy and Rock Lee. I have a little worry about Hinata, but, with help from her teammates, she should pass just fine, Kurenai said after gathering her thoughts. They all turned to watch Kakashi, who appeared to be uninterested. And your team, Hitaki-san? Sora inquired. I'm sure they'll be all right. Ma Sakura was barely defeated by Sasuke, who was at the top of his class, he said. What about Naruto? You don't think Sakura and Sasuke can just give Naruto the answers, do you? Sora uttered those words. They will undoubtedly assist him, Ma after all, they're teammates, he smiled, and Sora narrowed his eyes when he saw that Kakashi was not buying it. So it doesn't bother you at all that Sasuke has only ever helped Naruto once, and that was unconsciously, and that Sakura constantly chastises him every day rather than attempting to improve her teammate. Kakashi taught teamwork above all else, so most of them were taken aback when Sora asked, raising an eyebrow, how was their teamwork that poor? Ibiki entered before he could respond, and as he announced the passing teams, all eyes were on him while the rookie sensei were relieved that all of their teams had passed. Sora was a little interested in how Naruto fared. Kakashi was also curious because, now that he thinks about it, he realized that Sora had a point. Had he been concentrating too much on Sasuke due to pressure from the council? How did Ibiki-san fare for Team 7? Kakashi inquired. Ibiki laughed and said, I don't know what you taught that blonde kid Kakashi, but he seemed to have your legendary Sharingan and was able to see through my games. The Uchiha used his Sharingan to copy what the girl had discovered on her own. Ibiki-san, how did Naruto pass in any case? The other rookie sensei were gathered and paying close attention by this point, so Sora asked with genuine curiosity. He played me in poker for most of the test, then switched papers with the Nara in return for a cloud-gazing spot. Ibiki laughed. That was a very unconventional method of passing the test, and the other sensei were taken aback. Kakashi said, rather quietly, I didn't teach him that. Sora laughed. I have a feeling Naruto is going to be surprising you more and more throughout this exam. The other senseis seemed to concur with that statement in some way. 5 p.m. Inside the Forest of Death. They entered the forest with an earth scroll after the entire encounter outside the Forest of Death and Anko's bizarre little stunt, in which Naruto dodged the kunai she threw out of pure reflex. After about 2 hours, Naruto said he needed to use the restroom, and he left and returned rather abruptly. You're not Naruto, Sasuke said, tossing a kunai that got stuck in the man's leg instead of 2 whisker marks on each cheek. He has 3 additionally. He calls me Teme. Whenever he can. Before they fled to find Naruto, he grabbed the man's leg with the kunai and knocked him unconscious. Alongside Naruto. You know your stealth is horrible. He had just finished his business and zipped himself up when he said, "You know your stealth is horrible." The two genin behind Naruto froze mid-attack. Had he sensed them? They struck swiftly after their brief pause, only to discover that Naruto had gone up in a puff of smoke. Geez, so vicious to my poor Kage Bunshin anyway. They were unaware that Naruto had roughly 50 Kage Bunshin hiding and uttering the same thing at the same time, but his voice seemed to come from all directions. When he said, "They go back to back," he merely grinned. This was too simple, and then there was a twin shout of, "Byakurai." White lightning, author's note. I've always loved this bleach technique, but I still don't own it, and two lightning bolts struck the rain ninja in the chest. Naruto sighed at their stunned expressions and proceeded to search through their pockets for a heaven scroll, saying, "HMPH, thanks guys." He twirled the scroll and said, "Byakurai does more damage the more chakra I put into it, but if I put too little you just get paralyzed." Later, he leapt into the woods. Halfway through the tree, he encountered his team, and Sasuke just HMPHED while Sakura decided to ignore Hima until he produced the heaven scroll, at which point they both gaped at him until a strong wind carried him away, fortunately allowing him to keep the scroll. Alongside Naruto. "Ah, that hurts," Naruto groaned as he fell on his back in the middle of a clearing. He cracked his back and got to his feet, thinking, "That's going to leave a mark in the morning." He looked up to see an elephant-sized snake staring him in the face. "Ah, come on." He screamed and escaped its initial blow, rolling as he hit the ground and landing on one knee, staring at the snake that was glaring at him. With a sigh, he got to his feet and said, "I don't have time to deal with you. I'm going to have to cut this short," Naruto said, running through hand signs more quickly than most Chunin could follow. Raiden. Raryudan no Jutsu. Lightning release. Lightning dragon technique. Exploded from Naruto's mouth, and a dragon made of pure lightning streaked towards the surprised summon. The snake attempted to dodge, but it was too big, and it ended up slamming against a tree and vanishing. Naruto remarked with disappointment, "Ya no, my first two fights after training with Sora Ryu have been pretty disappointing." He then leapt off in the direction he believed they were going, and after about 5 minutes of travel, he saw Orochimaru biting Sasuke. Having spent 2 months with Anko, Naruto knew what that meant, and he swore as he told Sakura that Sasuke would come to him for power, and he melted into the woodwork. "Not if me and Sora Ryu have anything to say about it, you perverted freak," Naruto thought. Jumping to his feet, Naruto turned to Sakura and asked, "What happened?" Sakura started bawling about Sasuke being beaten around by some guy named Orochimaru. Apparently, Sasuke had used their earth scroll to try and get away, and Orochimaru burned it after she was down Naruto's side and said, "Alright, we need to find shelter. We must head east after I battled a massive snake 2 miles to the west of here. Find a cave or some exposed roots that we can utilize." They discovered an alcove at the base of a tree about 1.5 miles to the east, and Sakura offered to watch Naruto while he slept because he had fought. Naruto nodded and fell asleep, though it was restless because of Sasuke's close proximity and the aura he was emitting. With Anko following the body's discovery. Why is he here?" she thought as Anko raced through the trees at a breakneck speed. "He couldn't be here for me, could he?" she thought, stopping abruptly on a tree branch. "Come out, I finally found you, Orochimaru." "Kukuuku, Anko-chan, it is so good to see you again," Orochimaru exclaimed with a devilish smile as he emerged from the tree, laughing. "Preserve it," she roared, "I'm going to kill you here and now." As she charged him in the snake style, she feinted with her right fist and then threw a left, which Orochimaru skillfully knocked to the side before countering with his own left. She ducked by leaping back and yelling, "Senei Jashu, hidden snake hands." Orochimaru smirked before thrusting his hands forward and yelling, "Taju Senei Jashu, multi-hidden snake hands." When Anko's snakes were soon overwhelmed, she ran through some hand seals and put her hands to her mouth, screaming, "Kaden! Housenka no Jutsu! Phoenix flower technique!" She spat out 12 fireballs, destroying the remaining snakes before she was knocked into the tree and fell to the ground. Orochimaru emerged from the shadows, holding his hand in the snake hand sign, and said, "Kukukuuku, Anko-chan, fighting me while you still have my mark is not a very good idea." She managed to grasp the tree with chakra, slowing her descent and landing safely before looking around. Ready to defend herself suddenly, she fell to the ground, grabbing her curse mark as it flared wildly. He reprimanded her, clearly amused at her predicament. "I thought I taught you better than that. Fuck you." She spat at his feet and screamed, then writhed in agony once more. Anko-chan uses such language now quite unladylike. "I wish I could get rid of a failure like you, but I need you to deliver a message." He had a wild glint in his eye that promised something Anko really didn't want to know. Fortunately for her, Orochimaru jumped back just as a lightning bolt struck Anko. Orochimaru was shocked at first, but then his eyes narrowed. Now that you have that, such delicious pain is making me want to see you in more of it, Orochimaru said as he advanced on Anko. Tell Sarutobi-sensei not to cancel the exams or I will burn Konoha to the ground. It was 10 minutes before with the Hokage before an Anbu team burst through his door. Sarutobi was having a good day because he didn't have a lot of paperwork to deal with and had set up a trap to get Tsunade back to Konoha for a while. Jiraiya was on his way back with a new volume of Icha Icha. Slow down. Sarutobi said they were acting like rookies and Sarutobi couldn't understand why he sighed and rubbed his temples as they settled down. Report. He uttered those words. Stepping forward, the leader said, Sir, there have been reports of Orochimaru in the Forest of Death. Anko is running after it. What orders do you have? Sarutobi could hardly make out Sora's form behind the Anbu, and he was certain that the man knew Hiraishin because of how quickly he moved. As soon as he is identified, alert me. I'll be in the tower waiting. Go. I'm too old for this shit. Sora, please save her. The Hokage sighed as the Anbu shunned away. Returning to Anko. Present moment when the bolt struck, Anko expected to die, but instead she sat within the strangely comforting shape of something serpentine, with silver scales gleaming in the sunlight that poured through the hole in the trees. It must have been as long as a great white shark, with a rather smooth head and body, eyes that were slitted golden orbs that stared dangerously at Orochimaru, and a body that was protectively coiled around Anko. Its wings were rather large, and along its tail were small fan-like appendages for turns and balance. Its claws were rather vicious looking, with 5 claws on each hand, but still maintaining that streamlined appearance, and it was growling softly, the main dragon from How to Train My Dragon, with actual claws and silver. His fun would have to wait. Orochimaru could tell this creature was strong and exhausted from 2 battles. HMPH, bring my message, Anko. I'll be back, he said, melting into the tree. You are the first and only human I have ever allowed to ride me. Habiheim, appreciate and enjoy the ride. It'll be over soon enough, the dragon said, softly growling until he was certain that Orochimaru was gone. He then gently nudged Anko towards his back, and she climbed on after a moment of surprise. Sora, she said, and the dragon nodded before mentally saying, hold on. He took off, almost shattering the sound barrier, and they reached the tower in less than a minute. The sensei and the Hokage were waiting at the medical entrance when he trotted up to it. Many of the Chunin tensed for a fight, and their eyes widened as they landed. Sora, is that you? As the medics helped Anko onto a stretcher, the dragon nodded his head, glowed silver for a moment, then transformed back into his human form and hurried to Anko's side, Sarutobi said. Sarutobi cleared his throat and smiled at her relative safety. Sora gave them a sheepish look and remarked, a surprise? Everyone started to perspire. Well, who cares as long as Anko is okay? Sighed Sarutobi. Thank you, Sora-san. To everyone's surprise, he bowed lightly to Sora. Ma worm, Sora said with a laugh. You're welcome, but I detest formalities, so don't bow. Sora said, anyway, may I go? I'm a fighter first, diplomat second. Sarutobi laughed and nodded. Looks like you may have a chance to break her mask after all. The Hokage let that smile reach his face and turned to deal with the Chunins, which was going to take some time. Sarutobi had to fight the urge to smile. Hi. Go check on Anko please. Sora nodded and went down the corridor to the infirmary. As Sakura threw a kunai, Naruto was soundly asleep. Naruto shifted slightly and sighed to himself. He was still a little sleepy, so he instantly felt the scroll Sora had given him before he left and took it out. Greetings, Naruto. Hi there. That tight spot I described earlier must be yours, or are you simply inquisitive? Anyway, channel some chakra into the seal below and wipe some blood on it. It will be a pleasant surprise for you. Haha. Chibi Sora indicating victory. Impetuous Aniki. Naruto wiped his blood and poured some chakra into the seal, thinking, oh well, might as well find out what this is. Naruto poofed slightly as he looked into Shiroi's amber eyes. Naruto was perplexed now, that is, until he noticed Shiroi wearing metal gauntlets that caused her claws to converge and appear to move with her paws without impeding her or creating noise in case she was attacked. There, she was protected by a metal face mask that covered her head and some armor along the sides. Overall, she appeared prepared for combat. From the smoke, a thin piece of paper drifted downward. P.S. I hope the gift is appreciated. The dragons have blessed Shiroi here. She will undoubtedly be helpful in some way. Naruto laughed and turned to face Shiroi, who tilted her head sideways. Hee, that's fantastic. I'm eager to see what she can accomplish. As he scratched beneath her jaw, he thought before they heard Rock Lee outside announcing something to Sakura. She meowed softly in gratitude. Naruto stood up and said, come on Shiroi-chan, we got work to do. While standing when Shiroi is prepared for a practical joke, he simply yips and adopts Naruto's mischievous appearance. This is going to be a lot of fun. As he left the hovel, Naruto pondered. As they left the hovel, they saw Dosu using his melody arm to blast Lee, knocking him unconscious from the pressure on his ears as he moved forward. Naruto gestured for Shiroi to pursue the woman holding Sakura, and Shiroi appeared to fade into the darkness a little. With his arms crossed and an intimidating expression on his face, Naruto exclaimed, "Oi! Who the hell are you?" Dosu appeared somewhat taken aback. He believed they were both unconscious. "Name's Zaku Abumi, and your death dealer," charged Naruto, but Zaku yelled back. Dosu yelled, "Zaku, wait," in an attempt to stop his teammate from making a foolish move. That's too late. Zaku made a sharp right and charged directly at Naruto with a deft sidestep. Naruto caught Zaku's arm, spun with him, and threw him back at his teammate. Zaku was furious. He was not manhandled like that by anyone. He pushed his arms forward and yelled, "Zankuha!" Decapitating airwaves. Naruto's eyes widened before he leapt to avoid the blow while Team 10 was observing from the bushes. Dosu was eagerly trying to identify the newcomer. When Naruto landed, Zaku launched a vicious, if careless, taijutsu attack on him. Knee, sweep kick, left, and right. Naruto skillfully avoided or deflected every attack. Naruto was pleased to see the results of his training. Naruto dropped for a sweep kick as Zaku threw a punch, and Zaku leapt to avoid it. Naruto followed through and launched a spinning uppercut that sent Zaku flying across the field. Ino questioned, "Man, when did Naruto get so good?" Shikamaru remarked, "Difficult. It appears that we won't need to jump in after all." Guess who said, "Munch munch munch," glaring at Zaku as he stood back up and wiped blood from the side of his mouth. Naruto landed just as Zaku was about to charge. Kin let go of Sakura's leg and yelled in pain when she heard a low growl from the tree behind her. She quickly glanced around before Shiroi gave her a headbutt. Fortunately for Shiroi, the majority of the damage was inflicted on her fast mask. Unfortunately for Kin, she was completely unconscious. Naruto exclaimed with joy, "Congratulations, Shiroi-chan. We now have a hostage." Even though his teammates hadn't been informed that the boy had a companion, Dosu was silently berating their ignorance while Zaku laughed. Naruto gave him a humorous look before Zaku yelled, thrusting his hands forward, "You think we care about her? She's nothing more than a hindrance. If she's in the way, I'll blast her along with you." Zankuha. Decapitating airwaves. Shiroi barely avoided the blast as she leapt to the side, grabbing Kin's collar between her teeth. In the meantime, Naruto released his chakra weights by making a hand seal. The air suddenly filled with evil chakra. Everyone froze, then turned to see Sasuke standing in the hovel. His curse mark still active. Sakura was slightly to his left, Shiroi and Kin were to his right, and Naruto was directly in front of him. "Who did that to you?" asked Sasuke, observing Sakura's unkempt appearance. Naruto's and Dosu's ideas made the most sense. Even though many others had different ideas, Dosu questioned why Orochimaru had cursed Sasuke and then commanded his execution, but Naruto was concerned. "Whoa! This is not good. His chakra is too similar to that of a demon. My dragon side will take over and kill him at this rate before it gets out of control. I must stop him." Zaku became arrogant and swung his hands forward at Naruto and Sasuke, declaring, "I did it to her, and I'll do the same to you. Zanka, Kyokuha." Extreme decapitating airwaves. Both had disappeared as the dust settled. As Zaku put it, "Ha ha ha, not so tough now, are you?" Darkly, "Care to test that?" Sasuke asked. He reappeared in front of Zaku and slammed him into the ground, face down. "You seem awfully proud of these arms. Perhaps we should see what you like without them," Sasuke said, grabbing Zaku's arms and pulling them back at an odd angle. He then bent back Zaku's right arm until a sickening crack was heard, and everyone flinched as Zaku let out a painful scream before going dark. As Sasuke turned to face Dosu, Naruto materialized behind him and slashed him across the neck, causing the marks to disappear as he passed out. "Thank you, Kami." Naruto sighed in relief. He turned to Dosu and said, "I'm tired. Leave your scroll and you can leave with your teammates unharmed." Dosu nodded and took out an earth scroll. "I'm glad Aniki taught me how to control my dragon urges." "Phew," Naruto thought. "We can go in now." He simply didn't want to kill him if he could avoid it. He wasn't particularly exhausted. With that, Dosu leapt into the trees and said, "When we meet again we can't back down, so expect a full fight." Shiroi pointed to the trees and bushes while yelling at Naruto. Naruto gave a nod and said, "Come on out guys, if you want to fight. I'll be happy to take you on. If not, perhaps we could all travel to the tower together. Nothing against working together after you're done, right? Perhaps I can learn a little more about you." Uzumaki. Naruto Shikamaru and his group came out of the bush with him, saying, Troublesome, we are done and you're right, so we will travel with you. Anyone who could have heard his thoughts would have perspired. Ma, never mind, it's too troublesome. Before he looked up to see Team 9 standing with Lee over Neji's shoulder, Naruto noticed Sakura and Ino ogling Sasuke. Neji said, "We have no need for you, goodbye." Tenten gave them an apologetic look as they vanished into the trees. "Alright then, let's head out, I'll carry Sasuke. We can make it to the tower by the end of the day and have 2 days to rest," Naruto replied. Since this guy was outperforming those auto shinobi when they could have hardly hurt them, they all nodded. They started off quickly. At the same moment, Tower Hospital Anko woke up with a moan. She nearly ran out of bed when her memories from 2 days ago suddenly returned. 2 rather awkward arms held her down. Her scathing retort died in her throat as she turned to face the person holding her down with his arms securely securing her to the bed. Sora's head rested just beneath her pillow. Given that he was sitting next to her bed, it was clear that he was uncomfortable, but he appeared at ease. Sarutobi grinned at the shocked expression on Anko's face as she heard someone laugh and say, "You know he hasn't left your side for 2 days now? He had them bring his own tray of food so he wouldn't have to leave," she thought. "No one, no one, ever sat by my bed while I was out." As she carefully attempted to take off his arms, her surprise gave way to appreciation and a sincere smile appeared on her face. Tightening his arm around her midsection, he cradled his head closer. He was pressing directly into the side of her breasts, causing her to flush. Her female protection part of her brain suddenly registered that, and she developed a tick mark before slamming her hand into his head. Anko was riding his dragon form in a fantastic dream that Sora was having when he was struck in the head by a lightning bolt. As the Hokage snickered and Anko's eyes glowed with the rage of a righteous woman, he sprang to his feet, yelping in agony. When Sora saw Anko awake, he grinned broadly, forgetting the pain. "You're okay," he exclaimed with a smile. "Of course I'm okay, you moron. And what did you think you were doing dropping in as a dragon? Not to mention who gave you the right to watch over me, let alone sleep next to my bed?" Anko was ranting before he realized it was her way of dealing with the failure. Sora was a little shell-shocked. Sarutobi just left the room to let Sora listen to Anko's tirade. Kami is aware that he will likely hear from them more in the future. As Anko continued her tirade about how foolish, moronic, and idiotic he was, Sora grinned and even laughed a little. She yelled, "And why are you laughing at me?" "At him. You're cute when you're angry," Sora said, still grinning, and that silenced her. It wasn't anger that made her face redder than a tomato. "Is it true that he finds me cute?" "Cute but not sultry." Even though her blush was still red, Anko asked, "What do you mean by that?" He paused and pointed at each stop, saying cheerfully, "Quite simply, I think you are cute when you are angry." After staring at him for a minute, she lowered her head and covered her light brown eyes with her bangs. She asked softly and simply, "Why?" "Why what?" Sora inquired, unsure of her meaning. She nearly screamed at him. "Why did you stay by my side? Why did you save me? Why did you let me ride you if you haven't let anyone else?" "Because I wanted to do. I really need a reason to help you," Sora said after a brief pause. She had one last question she wanted to ask him before she broke down. Did you really mean what you said about the cursed seal?" She responded. Sora sighed. "Of course I did. I saw what that man did to you in the forest with just a little amount of chakra, much more and you would have died. It's unfortunate that he wants to mark me," Anko said with sadness, "merely to free me from Orochimaru's control." With a gentle smile, Sora seemed to read her mind and say, "Of course, having you for a mate would make for an interesting eternity indeed." You would think she had whiplash because her head shot up so quickly her voice was hardly audible above a whisper as she asked, Do you really mean that? Of course, you don't think I spent all this time with you just for Naruto he said, laughing and giving her a hug. At that moment, she actually began to cry, content that someone would take care of her rather than discarding her like Orochimaru did. She buried her face in his chest. She cried as she told him that no one had ever waited for her to wake up by her bedside, how her previous associations made no one want to be her friend, and just how much it meant that he came to her aid and took the time and effort to look after her. Before you ask, Sora did have a suspicion, but he never looked into her past. She grinned at him after wiping the tears from her eyes. "Mark me," she exclaimed with joy. "You sure you?" Sora laughed, but before he could finish, she slammed her lips into his. "Mark me now or I'm going to remove the reason for you to want to mark me," she replied gently. After swallowing and nodding, Sora directed his silver chakra into his teeth before he bit down directly on the cursed seal. His eyes briefly flashed golden. Anko hissed in agony as the seal twisted, but Sora's eyes went glassy. Within the seal, How dare this man try to override my seal? Orochimaru's soul growled in protest. When Sora arrived, she gave Orochimaru a quick glance before beaming fiercely. Orochimaru's eyes flashed gold once more as he said, "You know. This seal makes it so the two souls have to duke it out, and I assure you, my soul is far stronger than yours." For once, he was truly afraid, at least this part of him, with only 2 seconds outside the seal after nearly 5 hours of continuous torture. Sora took his time. The soul broke the seal when he flicked Orochimaru in his head, and Sora sighed, "This has become boring. I can't actually kill you, so I'm going to end this. Be gone." Returning outside, he released Anko's neck as Sora's eyes regained focus after a brief moment of swirling. The seal transformed into a silver dragon with a golden snake snugly encircling its body. Sora grinned and turned to face Anko, who took a mirror and gave it to her, saying in jest, "Here hubby Heim, check out your new tattoo." After a minute of scowling at the moniker, she adjusted the tiny mirror. She let out a gasp and then grinned broadly, but before she looked at her eyes, she questioned why the snake was golden. They had changed from being light brown to a deep shade of brilliant gold. She thought, "I guess I understand why it's golden, and I can't be angry at his nickname." After a minute or so, they paused to catch their breath, and she said, "Well, husband, I guess you need to buy me some new clothes." She glanced at Sora, who was smiling silly, before grabbing him again and starting a tongue war. Sora was sweating over the cost of his new wife, while Anko, who may not have noticed, loved getting new clothes, especially kinky ones, and was surprisingly not into BDSM after all. "I need a wedding present before we go on the honeymoon. But that'll have to wait until after the exams," she said, laughing as she hurried to her feet. "Remember that we have a job here." Anko dressed and they headed to the waiting area after Sora nodded and sighed. Time skip. Preliminary Chunin exam. Team 7 had been calm and easygoing since they arrived 2 days ago, and Sasuke had been getting his seal air sealed. Fortunately, no one had attacked them, and Iruka had welcomed them from the scrolls when they reached the doors. Unfortunately, Sasuke had been furious when he woke up and demanded that the Dobi explain to him how Naruto had defeated him. Now, they were in a huge hall with 2 balconies on each side, a viewing platform for the Hokage and his staff, and a statue with the ram hand sign. All of the clan leaders and their families, i.e., immediate family only, were present with the Hokage, who said, "Welcome, I'm glad to see you all here today. Let's get right to the point." Anko. "Hello, Hokage-sama. Now that too many of you brats were not eliminated by the second exam," Anko stated, "we need to have an elimination round." It seems that no one noticed the change in her eye color, except for Naruto and Kurenai, who were observing her eyes. "Looks like I gained a Nei-san," Naruto thought contentedly, while Kurenai was intrigued. "Pardon me," Anko said Hayate as he moved forward. "Let me gecko Hayate for clarification." Dots coughing. "Prior to us start, is there anyone interested in to give up? It won't impact your group." Concerned about Sasuke, Sakura remained silent until recalling the additional seal that had been applied to him. Kabuto held up his hand and said, "I wish to forfeit." Hayate nodded, and Anko called his name. Naruto gave Sora, who was standing with the Hokage, a covert enemy signal. "I got hurt on the last day and I don't believe I can continue." "Pardon me, what statistics do you have on that man?" Sora asked the Hokage. A little taken aback, Sarutobi gestured to Anko, who replied, "Kabuto Yukushi, son of a medical ninja, average genin, took the test 7 times. And consistently left before the preliminary stages." Anbu. When the Hokage ordered 2 Anbu to appear, he turned to Sora and said, "Thank you for catching that man. Have that man followed by a squad." "Don't thank me," Sora laughed, with the exception of Hana and Sum, who were giggling inwardly. The clan heads appeared rather shocked. "Thank you, Naruto, I just relayed the message." "Very well, regardless if we capture him or not," Sarutobi said, nodding, aware that the news was for the clan heads. "Bring Naruto to my office so he can get AC-ranked spy pay." The rules were apparently explained, and people were heading to the balcony. The majority of the clan heads remained with the Hokage, but the Aburame and Inuzuka families joined their children on the balcony. "If there is more when we capture him, he will be paid accordingly," Sora said, nodding and turning back to the proceedings. Even though Hana was standing next to Kiba, Naruto was happy to see her. He had chosen to stand halfway between all the teams rather than close to his own, and as he watched the screen light up with Sasuke Uchiha vs Akato Yoroi, he thought, "This is going to be boring. Why can't I go all out?" "You really shouldn't give away your only trump card," Naruto thought as he watched Sasuke blast him with a Gokaku no Jutsu, Grand Fireball technique, bye-bye Akato. He smirked as Sasuke knocked him out after he barely dodged the fireball. Naruto watched intently, trying to understand why Sasuke kept dodging and backing up instead of fighting. Naruto was a little curious until Shino spoke up for once, but only the three of them heard him. Naruto-san, because of my Kikai, I was told of your burden. Shibi and Shino came up to Naruto, nodding to him and joining him in silence. I have not felt your visitors, chakra in the last 3 months. Could you tell me why? Yes, I told him because he figured it out in class, Naruto said, looking at Shibi with a hint of surprise. I was granted permission by the Hokage. If this offends you, Naruto-san, I'm sorry. Just Naruto, please. Naruto laughed. Formality is something I detest regarding the fox. Shibi and Shino noticed that the Chunin were listening in, and both of their hives became agitated. Naruto frowned and said, I'm afraid I cannot divulge that information because there are prying jerks around. I'm sorry for being so impolite. Naruto, we're going, Shino declared. Not at all, Shino, and feel free to stay if you so choose, Naruto said, shaking his head. Your rudeness wasn't the issue. Come find Sora or me after the exams if you want to hear the story. The Chunin who were listening were all concerned, but from the sound of it, the Kyuubi was gone. If that was the case, then where did it go? Shibi nodded, and Shino just stood back where he was actually comfortable with someone who carried a burden that people discriminate against the most. Hinata, despite being over her crush, still looked at the new Naruto and wondered what happened to change him. The screen flashed and Shino vs. Zaku appeared on the screen. Dosu cautioned Zaku to pay attention and keep his cool, and Shibi merely nodded to Shino, who went downstairs. During this time, Kankuro had fought Masumi Tsurugi and soundly defeated him. Apparently, Kankuro was a puppet user, and Tsurugi could contort himself like rubber. However, Tsurugi lost the match quickly after being hit with some poison. The Chunin came toward Naruto as the battle began, and Kakashi interrupted, saying, Naruto, what were you talking about with Shino? It was personal and you should know that, Naruto said, scowling as he turned to face Sora, who was looking pretty intently everywhere but at Naruto. Naruto, if there is something wrong, I'm sure my father, Asuma said, genuinely worried. Sighing, Naruto said, this is intimate. Neither the Hokage nor you have any say in the matter. The Chunin's blatant disrespect for subtlety had Shibi's hive buzzing a little, and the genin were all preoccupied with them rather than the fight, even though Shino already knew it would happen. Please leave me alone and go back to your students. I am your sensei, Naruto, Kakashi remarked with a frown. You ought to trust me, and if the fox is acting strangely. Naruto interrupted him once more, snorting, Sensei. You have no right to share that title with me. What have you taught me during my 6 months on your team? You have obviously learned the value of teamwork and tree walking, snapped Kakashi, and he kept asking himself, what have I taught Naruto? My Naruto is a little resentful of this, Kakashi fans. That's right, Hataki-san, sneered Naruto. I am the only one who learned how to work with others. Even then, since Wave and Sakura are too weak and fandurlish to give a damn about me, Sasuke hasn't helped. You even allowed her to hit me every day. What have you taught Sasuke, please? Shino had won his fight by now, and Naruto's group had the majority of the attention. Sora grinned as he considered the smackdown Kakashi was receiving as a sensei, thinking, you may be a great shinobi but you allowed your so-called debt to Obito to cloud your judgment. Kakashi's eyes widened as he thought about Sasuke and his group. Sasuke learned the fire dragon, Phyonxic fire, and of course we started his elemental manipulation, he said. How could I have let that happen? I really haven't taught Sakura or Naruto anything. With a sigh, Naruto turned back to the flashing screen and said, you realize your error. Maybe you could make it up to Sakura, but it's too late to make amends with me. Don't let that fool you, senseis. Everyone has a weakness. The Chunins were a little surprised that Kakashi was doing this, but only Guy knew why. If you can do that, I'll call you sensei again. The screen flashed for Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno, and Naruto and Sora both moaned. Kakashi's was just the most obvious, Naruto said, and Shibi was rather impressed by how he deftly sidestepped the original question and got them off on a tangent. Inoichi questioned, what's wrong, Sora-san? After the clan heads close to Sora heard him. I hate to tell you this, but this is going to be a draw. Sora sighed. The two individuals down there arrived here by way of their teammates. Coattails, they are elite fangirls, and although Ino may possess her family's jutsu, Sakura is just an academy student with a good memory. She might be respectable by now if she joined the medic corps or practiced genjutsu. With a frown, Inoichi and the other clan leaders said, surely you are exaggerating. Sincerely, I wish I were Inoichi-san. They have been terribly let down by their senseis and this academy system, Sora remarked. Sarutobi exhaled. No matter what I do, the civilian council shoots down all progressive training for the school, saying it's not cost-effective or that the civilian students can't pass. As they observed the battle, Sora gave the Hokage a quick glance and said, "You are Hokage Worm. Make the changes and ignore them. You will lose more shinobi than you will save if you don't." The fact that well-known women were frequently subjected to rape made everyone cringe. Fangirls expect their knight in shining armor to always be there, not to mention the fate that awaits Kunoichi should they be captured. Inoichi thanked Sora and said he would take to training both girls personally if that's what it takes to get them to an acceptable level. Everyone nodded, and they looked back at the fight to see that it was a draw and that, although they fought admirably, their skills were terrible. Sora smiled at that. Shikamaru versus Kin was an intellectual battle, and Kin was knocked unconscious due to the planned strategy of the famed Nara mind. As she was being taken off the field, however, Naruto noticed the look the sound Chunin had in his eyes, and he didn't like it at all. The next two fights were rather dull. Temari was the worst possible matchup for Tenten, but when Temari was about to let Tenten fall onto her fan, Sora appeared and caught Tenten. "A fighter who gave her all should be honored, not humiliated, Temari," he said, glaring at the Sunanin, who shook slightly before huffing and leaving the arena. "Shibi-san, as a favor for the story," he said in a whisper as he turned to face Shibi. Shibi raised an eyebrow at that, and Naruto sighed. "I have reason to believe Odogakure is actually run by Orochimaru. I would like for you to take Kintsuchi under your protection. She might provide you with information if you place her under protective custody." Shibi nodded and went down to the infirmary, saying, "She does not have the same vicious streak as her teammates, and I do not want a woman to be harmed if I can help it." He would not go back without Kin, but she was in his clan's infirmary at her request after being granted asylum. The screen flashed once more, stopping on two very significant names. Kiba Inuzuka versus Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto sighed at having to face Kiba, as he had hoped to wait and prove himself in some other way, but he did interrupt Naruto's makeout session with Hana, while Kiba was hollering and whooping, "Come on, Akamaru. This should be simple because we got the dead last." He uttered those words. "Kiba, don't count him out, that was half a year ago, he has changed since then," Hana said, shaking her head. "Yeah, he's changed all right." Kiba frowned to believe that you wish to date him. "I will not permit it, and I will demonstrate that he is incapable of dating you," he shouted. The Hokage, Sora, and Anko were all smirking like they were congratulating Naruto in their heads, but the Hokage and Sakura, who had both woken up, wondered what she was smoking. Hana was blushing so red that Hinata would be ashamed, and once it hit her, she had two beams of concentrated ki coming at her. Soon was grinning like a madman, but that faded as she felt her daughter take a step back towards her. When Hana looked at Hinata and Kurenai, she saw that both of them were angry. Kurenai was angry with Hinata because, although she had broken her obsessive need to be close to the boy, she hadn't completely broken her heart. She was just not that cruel. Hinata, on the other hand, was angry because she hadn't given up on Naruto. She had only pretended to do so in order to get her sensei to stop bothering her. So here we are, with Hana feeling a little afraid, until Kiba and Naruto came downstairs and everyone's eyes were on them. "Dobi, you're not going to date my sister after I beat you, right?" Kiba said with a snarl. Akamaru was actually hiding in Kiba's jacket. He could tell something was off about Naruto and that he had gained alpha status. With a low growl, Naruto withdrew a scroll and wiped blood and chakra on it, saying, "Your sister decides who gets to date Mut. Who am I to turn away such a beautiful woman if she wants to date me?" With a puff of smoke, Shiroi emerged in front of Naruto wearing her battle armor, eyeing Kiba before yelling with joy and dropping into a fighting stance. "Looks like your mate is a smooth talker," Sum said, laughing as Hana blushed once more up in the stands. "I wonder what else he can do with his tongue." "Mom, your mom was right, even though his tongue is good," Hana said angrily, "but it still looks like I was right about Shiroi. She has had some training." As Akamaru weakly leapt out of the jacket, Naruto gazed at Kiba for several minutes. "Shiroi-chan, how about playing with Akamaru for a bit? I'd like to take on Kiba one-on-one." "All right, Dobi, take care of that fox, Akamaru," Kiba spoke with confidence. Shiroi and Akamaru exchanged glances before Akamaru gave Kiba a, "What the fuck are you smoking?" look. Shiroi, on the other hand, summoned her armor. "Yes, she can do that," and sauntered slowly to Akamaru, who had his eyes fixed on her form. She walked directly in front of him, then trotted past him, wiping her tail across his snout before racing to a corner. Akamaru blinked twice before his mind went blank and he swiftly fled after the vixen. Everyone saw that they had stopped in a corner, and that Shiroi was scratching behind Akamaru's ear while his foot thumped against the floor. While Kiba appeared positively indignant, Tsume and Hana were laughing, and Naruto chuckled before stating, "Well, she is a vixen after all." Jiroi simply gave him a foxy smile. "That's not what I meant, but it works too." "Let's get this started right away," Kiba said, giving Naruto a fierce look. "This Dobi has to be defeated." With a shout of, "Hajime," from Hayate, Kiba dashed forward. He threw a straight right which Naruto dodged and threw his own right which was blocked by Kiba, who jumped back. He growled lightly and yelled, "Shikyaku no Jutsu." Four legs technique. His nails grew longer into claws and he looked more feral. He crouched down on all four limbs. "Let's see you block this." Suga. He leapt and whirled in midair, turning into a tornado of movement, and charged directly at Naruto. Kiba stopped spinning and landed, looking around, and Naruto, who had seen this move before and knew it was difficult to learn, was rather impressed. He made the hand seal to release his weights and vanished just before he was hit. "Where are you?" he yelled, trying to pinpoint him with his smell. Naruto chuckled to himself and dropped from the ceiling. When he was in range he yelled, "Ryu Koka." He flipped in midair and slammed his heel into Kiba's head, knocking him halfway across the arena with the forced dragon's descent. "You're a skilled fighter, Kiba, but you shouldn't meddle in your sister's affairs. You don't have any rights," Naruto declared. Kiba got to his feet and spat blood out of his mouth, saying, "Bullshit. You are in no way deserving of my sister."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.